All right. How are you?
I'm good. I got a leak. You want to know about it?
What type of leak?
I heard Reuters is working on an article that Tesla's scrapping the Optimus program. That they're going to quote some anonymous sources, I'm sure.
Is Omar here yet? Let's see.
This is comedy for anybody who do not. This is not financial advice or real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, I kind of want to read the article first.
It'd be hilarious if Reuters quoted me saying this in a joke, and they're like, "The sources on X say," just totally lose context of comedy. Sarcasm is lost.
I actually haven't even read the article yet.
I mean, did you see Elon's eyeball response to Sawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that confirms what likely is the case is that maybe they're changing some staffing allocations. It doesn't mean that they're scrapping the project. I could see how like the game of telephone might have happened. Maybe somebody said, "Oh, hey, they're shifting focus. They're really confident," and then somebody said something to someone else, and it gets to the editor, and they're like, "You know what would really make this article pop is changing these words."
What did you think of the stock price reaction at first?
I honestly didn't see it until after. I think
Yeah,
it's
I
a
honestly, I didn't see it until after either. Somebody told me about it
so
in
yeah.
the replies, but
That's
it
that tells you
dropped
how much I
whole.
care about it, but also I think it's probably algorithmic, right? Um, there's a bunch of algorithmic trading happening, high frequency trading companies, and they probably drive that. I don't think humans are reacting that fast. That's definitely not humans.
Yeah, but it dropped by in a matter of minutes. Dropped by 4%, and then another percent about half hour later.
How much
So
volume?
high volume. So it dropped by about 5%. So it was about over 170, and it went down to 160. So that's, let's see, 10 over 170, 5.9%. Um, I don't see the volume, but I'm guessing
It,
it's high volume.
the reason why I think it's not material is there's no way a human could read the article, not the title, but read the article, interpret what it's saying, and then make a decision that's rational. So it had to be either algorithmic training or quick responses where people have a Bloomberg terminal, they see some news come in and they just react, or momentum trading, or one of those other, technical things. I don't think this is fundamentally based. So I wouldn't use
Yeah,
it as
that's
like a
that's really what I
value.
want to. That's what I want to kind of understand a little bit more, and not jump to conclusions, because it was a little bit of surprising reaction. I think, like when I first read the headline, as wrong as it might be, okay, um, it says focus on robotaxis. Like, why is that a bad thing? You know?
Because the market doesn't believe robotaxis is going to happen, but they really think that the Model 2 will happen because they can understand one, but they can't understand the other.
hmm Yeah. I mean, I guess that's
I think there's also this weird notion that like somehow they think maybe robotaxi is different. Like, what does scrapping it mean? Does it maybe mean the unboxing process is still happening, but now all the vehicles will be able to have a removable uh, steering wheel? Okay, then you could say that the Robotaxi has been the only way it's going to be done. But if you look at Chuck showed a good video of how easy it is to remove the rear view mirror. That design approach of making it very easy to remove something. Maybe I think it's also really easy to remove the side mirrors on the Cybertruck, for example. That kind of approach could easily be done for anything that's steer by wire.
hmm Machine. What do you think?
If Tesla announced that they're only producing Robotaxis as the next gen vehicle, the stock would go to $100. I mean, the fact is, I'm going to agree with what Meta said basically. The market doesn't believe that. They don't believe in Robotaxis yet. And if you take away the growth that's implied in the stock right now in terms of earnings based on the next gen vehicle, you're not left with much.
Are you getting chased by the cops right now? Are you on
No,
like a
can you hear that?
high speed chase?
It sounds like it's right by Popeyes, so there might be a burglary in process.
Are you stealing chicken now?
I
Wow.
would
The
never
stock
resort to
goes
that.
down 5% and machine is stealing chicken from
Well,
Popeyes.
actually, since all I had was puts, it worked out quite well for me.
Did you
And
Did you sell your puts?
I was on stationary bike, and I happened to see that it plummeted. And so I saw the news. I was like, "Oh, this is probably a rumor." So I'm gonna cover these now. Yeah, I sold the puts at 160, and there was like high IV. So I mean, those things got me like 20-30% gain in, I don't know, a few weeks. So I took the money and ran. And I saw it at that time, right before he tweeted. I didn't have any time to mess around. I'm not paying attention minute by minute. But you could have played this both ways. I mean, some people probably sitting there waiting and find him tweet. As soon as he tweets, you could buy calls, and even with like 30 seconds delay or something, you can make some money. So it's total ridiculous. It's all ridiculous manipulation.
Let's go. We have a new speaker real quick. Let's go to that real quick. Dallas Tesla Club. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for letting me join. Just a quick question. New FSD supervised customer here. Blown away by the software. First time getting to use it. Absolutely amazing stuff. My question is, I've noticed at night I'm uploading somewhere in the odds of 40 to 50 gigabytes of data. Luckily, if my AT&T fiber is uncapped. But my question for you is it observing the driving nature of us while we're not using FSD just because the software's on the car? Like, is the neural net gaining knowledge based on how we're driving while FSD is not enabled, is my question. Thank you.
Yes, there's different degrees of information here. So it will predict what it wants to do. And then if you're within a certain range of what it predicted, a trigger may not fire. If you're outside of that range, a trigger probably fires and says, "Hey, record this," because what I was going to do and what the human did are different. It may also predict where cars are going to be, and then when you drive, if those cars are not where as it predicted, it might do triggers. So it's not even like you're driving; it's what it's observing in the world. So there's going to be all these different triggers that they write to capture that information for non-drivers. For people who are actually driving it, they also get intervention data and various other things. So there is data, but it's not as rich.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I also want to say, big fan of you guys. I've been listening for a while, and you guys actually motivated me to start a page on X and to just give this thing a shot. So appreciate you guys a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Yama's taking all the credit. He's taking it. Meta, I got a follow up. So, are they still querying the fleet for like things like a truck that's where to label or maybe not label, but they want video data? Is that still happening? Like shadow mode?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to as the first bit of collection, right? So shadow mode can predict trajectories and see if they're consistent, both of ego, not ego, various other things. Again, this is not insider information. It's just like very obvious. If you were going to build a system, you would do this, and they've referenced it. You remember the video where they had vehicles with bikes on the back, and they showed how they were auto labeling those. That's the equivalent of what they would write as a trigger, right? So you could basically write a very simple thing that runs asynchronously on the vehicle, especially on a vehicle where it's not driving. You can run all these triggers to say, "Hey, run this hot dog, not a hot dog. Is this a car with a bike or not a car with a bike?" Try to find examples of this in the fleet, etc.
Okay. Omar, what did you think of the Reuters article and then Elon's reply.
Hey, so yeah, great day. Got to pick up some more Tesla shares cheaper, which, you know, is just pretty awesome, I think, given everything that's happening. I'm trying to increase my stake. So, it's kind of interesting. I got a DM a couple days ago, maybe yesterday or something, and they said Elon is prioritizing, the Robotaxi over the vehicle with controls or whatever. But I think the vehicle with controls is not being canceled. They are going to make a vehicle with controls built on the next gen platform that's going to be a more traditional compact crossover. I mean, just on the last earnings call, Elon said they're going to, start production by the end of next year. So, what would change that quickly that they're suddenly canceled it? And I think he's denying that it's being canceled. So the next gen platform is going to be really a major, major change in how they make a car. So more modular, making these different sub-assemblies, assembling it in different ways so that you can actually build multiple vehicles on the same platform. So when we talk about the Robotaxi and the compact crossover, what does that mean? The compact crossover is going to have, I think an interior that looks a lot like a Model Y, right? Forward facing seats. When you have a robo taxi without controls, then you can maybe have the seats facing in with each other. You can play with the interior a little bit, make it feel more spacious, I think, despite its smaller size. So they're going to have essentially multiple versions of the interior geared around these use cases. So I think this vehicle's starting production end of 2025, which realistically means we're really getting into it in 2026. Where do you think FSD is going to be in 2026? Where do you think hardware, 6 or 7 or whatever, or hardware 5 is going to be at that time? So if they were not focusing on a driverless vehicle production at this point, they would not be doing their job. But don't confuse that to mean that there isn't going to be a version of the vehicle with controls to sell into markets like Europe or Africa or other places, or just to sell to people who love to drive, right? I mean, that's a Tesla. It's a fun vehicle to drive. So the next gen platform, a lot of the work is overlapping between all of the different vehicles, right? The factories they're setting up, the production line, the production processes they're setting up, the technologies they're adopting, it applies to both. So it's not really a one or the other. It's really the next gen platform. And yes, there will be a version with controls, but there's also going to be a version without controls.
Meta.
There's also like this very keen observation, right? Like we've discussed how threes and Ys are now everywhere. People want their cars to look a little differently, whether it's on the exterior or the interior. They probably don't care as much about Robotaxi, but even with Robotaxi, there's probably a bunch of iteration of different configurations as we learn what makes sense. Maybe some have a bed for long range, some don't. Cribs, child seats, etc. The unboxed process enables this iteration at a level that no other company is going to have. So I think the biggest things that were a risk to the unboxed process were the 48-volt architecture, the Ethernet loop, and the drive-by-wire. Those have all been de-risked with the Cybertruck. So I'm really excited about the unboxed process. I think I would love to hear Wes's thoughts on this at some point, but I think the only risks now are like getting factory, getting people, getting equipment there. It's like the standard stuff.
I think Wes is avoiding the space today. My feeling, because he knows what we're going to talk about.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay? I'm guessing. I'm just guessing. I don't think he's a fan of the upcoming topic.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair.
Right? Yeah. Machine. What did you mean by this is going to be a what test you called it? Is that the
Rorschach.
BAT? Yeah, Rorschach test.
Oh, if it was, I mean, whether or not the news was true, how people would read that supposed news is a Rorschach test, which I don't know. I know you're from a different country. Rorschach test. Are you familiar with Rorschach test? I mean, you did go to
Yes.
Penn, so I'm not sure you guys really understand that
I
sort of
didn't.
stuff.
I didn't go to Penn.
I thought you did. Anyways, yeah, it's something
I'm not
where
surprised that you have your facts wrong.
it's something where that obviously either bears or bulls would take the same news and interpret it to their benefit, their supposed benefit. Bears would look at the news and say, look, they're giving up on the Gen 2 car, moving to Robotaxi, which we know is going to be a failure. Therefore, Tesla's going to lose value. Investors are going to stop buying it. They're going to sell, etc. And bulls will look at the same news and say, this is great. Tesla's really bullish. This means Musk is really bullish on FSD progress. And that's a positive. So it's just one of those things again, where the same news, people on both sides will interpret to their benefit. And I just find that amusing.
Right up.
I feel like Machine eventually got there, but I was very curious if he knew the brain bug of the Rorschach test. But effectively, it's confirmation bias is really strong in humans and devoid of actual information. Given the same input, people will use their internal projections onto the thing. So that's where the confirmation bias kicks in, which is funny because, often people say with LLMs, garbage in, garbage out. But that's not necessarily true. You might get garbage in, projections out.
Yeah, very interesting topic. I would love to delve into that psychology of it later on, maybe another day. And yeah, maybe I'm actually thinking of doing like weekend spaces that are a bit more chill, less focused on the news of the day, and maybe kind of longer term topics like that. But
Don't
at the
make
top of
don't
your
make
screen,
promises about chill spaces, Yaman. It's kind of like, hard for you to commit to that.
it's like 2 weeks. Yeah, at the top of our screens is the Patreon link. If you'd like to support the space, you can do so at the top of our screens. We have I believe Todos is a FSD Robotaxi skeptic, or was the last kind of I heard from him.
Almost. I'm European. I guess that's the same thing nowadays because I'm not skeptic about how well it works in the US or that they'll get there. No doubt that they will. It's just a matter of time. But don't know if you follow the international as well, but there was a post recently by Rohan Patel. God bless his heart. His posts are so good. And the new UN ECE legislation that is what all European countries are under the thumb of. We all thought that they were going to allow FSD by either the end of the year or close to the beginning of the next year, because there was an update to the UNEC regulation. However, Rohan Patel effectively shut it down, saying that even with this new update to the regulation, we can't use any system that has machine initiated actions. We can't even use a lane change if we don't put on the blinkers first.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, space.
Oh, sorry.
And you're
Okay.
you're welcome to listen to that. There's a recording on X. There's a recording on YouTube that you can go 2x speed back and forth. But did
Okay,
you have a
so-
question?
No, what I wanted to say is that, so in relation to whether only to go full Robotaxi or the Model 2, now the reason if we react over here in Europe very negatively to full FSD is because, to no fault of Teslas, it's just legislation makes it incredibly hard for it to be a big plus for Tesla over here.
All right, thank you. So you're welcome. How are you?
Doing good. Crazy morning.
Crazy morning. Yeah, that was a wild reaction to the stock.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I find myself looking forward to Tesla Live without knowing that was going on. It kind of makes it sound like I said it because of that, but one of the replies said, "Interesting news today." I'm like, "What news?" What was their initial reaction?
There's been a lot of these type of Reuters stories over the years. Some of them have some validity to them eventually, and a lot of them just don't end up becoming true. I think we obviously Elon said Reuters is lying, but that's very unclear because there's a lot of things that could still be true but they're lying about. Like the headline could be a lie. They might have not canceled it, but maybe it's on hold, or maybe they just transferred more resources to just the Robotaxi platform or FSD effort. I don't know. Obviously, I feel like maybe Tesla and the team or Elon and the team feel that FSD has performed so well and they're really bullish on it that maybe they just wanted to shift more resources towards the Robotaxi FSD effort. And this doesn't necessarily mean the $25,000 car is canceled, one of the steering wheel, but they're on the same platform. So, I don't know. I hope Elon provides some clarity in the Q1 earnings call in a couple weeks because there is going to continue to be speculation about this. The moment this story came out, CNBC texted me to come on tonight because they know the story is negative and they want me to comment on it. So there needs to be some clarity, I think, from Elon, more than what he's already provided.
Machine.
First of all, Sawyer's initial reaction when he saw that news was salivating at the mouth that he could tweet about this and get so many reactions. I'm positive of it. Secondly, whether or not we can go into obviously in detail about the trade-offs and the sentiment and all this, but I will say I do believe James the cat posted and deleted some information about some other insider employee indicating similar sentiment, and had sent him this information days before. So I think there is definitely, when there's smoke, there's fire. There's something to this. It's not, Reuters is not coming up with this out of thin air, is my guess.
But the
I think they
same
may.
guy DM'd me too, and he didn't say that the 25K car was being canceled. He
Right,
just said that they're prioritizing the Robotaxi more.
right.
It's the same guy, damn dirty Tesla, I think.
Yeah, so also I kind of raise an eyebrow at someone DMing everybody at the same time,
They did not DM me.
Yeah, why don't I get these DMs?
Well, I didn't either.
Ridiculous. Shame. No, I'm kidding. I don't have my DMs open. That's why I don't get them.
I will say there is a lot of specific information in that Reuters article, so maybe there's validity to some line in there. I don't know. But when Elon says Reuters is lying, we don't know what they're lying about or if it's just the entire story. Elon wasn't really clear about that.
We have a long time bear, short time scroll on the board. Let's see what he has to say. He's been requesting to speak every single day now.
Is that me? What's good, everybody?
Of course not. Of course not.
I'm
How can it
happy
possibly
to be
be
here.
you?
No, I'm happy to be here. I want to extend an olive branch and say happy Friday. I'm surprised by the news. I just joined like a couple minutes ago. I want to see how shocked you guys are if that were to be true. It sounds like everybody would be pretty surprised.
Definitely.
Did you have a question?
Actually, I had a question about the most recent full self-driving characteristics between like assertive and normal, but I think that's a little off topic, so I didn't want to ask it. I just don't notice the changes between those as much anymore, and I was curious if other people did, but I know that's kind of off topic.
I'm thinking about doing a set of an article that lists the rules of the space, and I wonder if I should add profile picture rules. I don't know.
Yeah, I have noticed some weirdness in that too. Like sometimes it's going too slow. You put it in assertive, it's still not fast. Sometimes you put it in chill, it's still being really assertive. So there does seem to be some more refinement needed there.
That's new that I've noticed in version 12. At 11, it was much more drastic of a difference between the different modes, but 12, it seems almost like nothing to me.
Yeah, could be a bug or something, or just some more training they need to do of the model to differentiate those behaviors. But, another thing I wanted to say is look, this is a company that when they hit a wall in Model 3 production, set up a tent and they made another production line and made more Model 3. People worrying that they set up this whole next gen line and then they're like, oh my God, we didn't solve autonomy. What are we going to do? We didn't add a steering wheel. The thing is steer by wire. Just slap a fucking steering wheel on there. How hard can it be? Right? Like, this is not really, I think that much of an issue. They've said before, like, first of all, they said, we're going to build the next gen platform in Berlin. I don't think that you can really build it in Berlin and expect autonomy to be approved across the EU bloc. So there has to be a compact crossover version for that factory, at least, I think.
No
And
hands mode.
yeah.
Yeah, Elon likes to say all user input is error. The fact that there was these modes is, I think, part of the adoption strategy to get people to use the ADAS system in the future. For Robotaxi, you don't get in the car and tell the taxi driver how to drive. They drive as fast as they can, as comfortably as they can, as safely as they can. And they'll continue to make the cars better and better to increase the speed while keeping safety and comfort.
I disagree. I think that the user will be able to save certain preferences, maybe certain routes they like or dislike, or, um, you know, how they want it to drive, whether they want it to speed, things like that. It should be able to be saved to your profile, and then any robotaxi you call could adapt its driving style to the preferences of the rider within some reason, right? I mean, you don't want to give them complete control, but if they say, you know, go slow on speed bumps or something like that, you should be able to respect that, I think.
Every single configuration creates a cross product of the total different model combinations that they have to test and evaluate. I think that just is not efficient, at least.
I mean, I think it should really just be able to take instructions from a human, even with voice. Like a passenger needs to be able to say, pull over here, stop, you're going the wrong way, turn around, or right here is fine. And it needs to be able to take in that input and actually respond to it, I think. Long term, of course.
You want to talk about Tesla's data advantage post?
Sure. I thought that post by the cruise engineer was a little silly, so I'd be happy to discuss it.
Okay. Let's go point by point. Is that cool?
No.
Well,
just
I'll
very
take it as a
simple.
yes.
This guy was a product manager. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I understand that's your feeling, and I trust. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I trust that you know what you're talking about on this matter. But at the same time, we have quite a few people in this space, and I think that a discussion around this would be helpful because this is the kind of stuff that we all read from bears. I think people should be informed why these things are wrong. So I'll pin at the top this post, and we can go point by point.
I just think it's funny we have someone from Cruise lecturing us about how to do this.
Yeah. Matthew and Tobin, who used to work for NVIDIA and also for Cruise before, says Tesla FSD is once again making quite an impression, yet we're still left with anecdotes instead of data. One point that comes up often from Tesla enthusiasts, investors, influencers is that Tesla has a data advantage over other autonomous driving companies. At first glance, this might seem true. Tesla has, at minimum, 1,000 times the number of cars as Waymo. Yet, if Tesla has a data advantage, why hasn't it materialized yet? They've had this advantage since 2016. And while Waymo offers a driverless robotaxi service in 5 cities, Tesla still has no unoccupied vehicles on the road. So why is Tesla behind? Put simply, Tesla has no data advantage over Waymo or others for 4 key reasons. 1. So we're going to discuss point 1 first. Tesla's data isn't as useful as it seems. Tesla effectively collects data randomly. It's not actually random. Tesla cars are more likely to be along popular commuter routes, for example, but it's not really planned either. For other autonomous driving companies, data collection isn't random. The training cars are traveling deliberately, not randomly. If they need more examples of buses, garbage trucks, metro rails, trams, trains, or whatever, Waymo can deploy its fleet to where those scenarios are likely to be encountered. I guarantee that Tesla no longer needs data for driving on highways. I imagine they have enough data for that. So already, their data advantage is being cut down. On the other hand, edge cases are important, if not vital. Other AV companies gather data on these edge cases deliberately, sometimes even staging them. Tesla's method using uncontrolled fleet makes it much harder for Tesla to collect real data about all the edge cases it will face. Let's start with Meta, that machine, that Omar.
So there's a couple of errors this person is making in judgment. So one, it's not like every single minute of driving is collected and stored forever, right? So that's not how the data advantage works. The data advantage is like being able to ask a question live of all the cars that are driving and say, for the next few hours, for the next day, look for situations where the following thing happens, and then collect that data and send it to the server. If they collected all the video, it'd be absorbently expensive. The point about the richness of the data is correct. I wouldn't say that Waymo's data is wrong or they didn't have enough data, but the advantage that Tesla has is that they have all the routes that people actually use, whereas Waymo had to solve for an entire city and then figure out what routes people are using. And obviously, they still haven't gotten it to a point where people are using it regularly for their daily routes, etc., because they don't have that data.
Okay. Machine.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Waymo has, we've gone over the data advantage before in depth. Waymo can't go collect edge cases because they don't know what the edge cases are. This is a big part that people seem to miss. That's hard to understand, I guess, unless you actually do data science. But you don't know what are the problematic cases for many of them until you actually discover them and say, whoops, we didn't consider that before. And you're not going to come across it until you actually see it in your real life data set. So, no, Waymo can't just go forcibly say, I'm going to go collect more of these cases. That works for some subset, but not in general.
Okay.
So, that's
Omar.
incorrect.
This is so wrong that it's laughable. Nothing about Tesla's data collection is random. This guy makes it sound like the cars just upload everything they see. That's not how it works. The trigger infrastructure that runs across 6 million cars queries for exactly what they're looking for. It's not random, it's real. It's everything, right? Anywhere that people drive, they can collect data. And if nobody ever drives there, then I mean, why do we need to drive there, right? When you have 6 million cars, they go everywhere. They see everything. So to build a training data set like this, you want volume, you want millions of clips, but you want variety. You want to be showcasing different weather conditions, different situations, things you couldn't think of. This guy may think, oh, we at Cruise, we thought of everything and we told it where to go. Well, that didn't work out so well, did it? Your service has been shut down because of your overconfidence. So, I mean, the humans can never think of everything. It's what did you not think of, right? What is the real data that people are driving on that you didn't think of? So that's the big advantage. I mean, what they have, the data they're going out and trying to collect manually is a drop in the bucket. And it's artificial data, it's their test drivers. It's not real humans doing their real drives. So that's actually what you want. You want real data, you want the variety of the real world. And contrary to being random, it is actually very carefully curated what they put in that data set.
Okay, great. Now, Matthew already said that he can't join today, but we're going to discuss this topic anyway. And then when he joins in the future space, maybe we can revisit for a round 2. But if there's anyone in the audience who agrees with Matthew and who also has some experience in either Cruise or Waymo or Zoox, and maybe can argue the other side, you're welcome to request to speak. Yoda?
Yeah, in addition to the variety and the volume that Omar spoke about, I think part of the advantage is that Tesla has the economic to support taking all that raw data, turning that into a model. If you remember some of the filings from the OpenAI squabble between Elon and Sam, they talked about how OpenAI needed the sort of the cash cow business to feel the needs around compute and essentially the cost of creating that model. And so, how is Waymo going to find the resources, or Cruise for that matter, find the resources to turn the raw data um, into the model? And I think Tesla has a unique ability to essentially take the cash that's generated from the hardware business and turn that into funding to complete the FSD.
Meta, would you like to follow up on any of the points mentioned before we move on to second point?
I'll play a little bit of the devil's advocate here because I think people are being too bullish on the Tesla side here. Waymo can collect data after an issue has been identified, right? So they do have that advantage. When it starts to rain, they can go out and have like a list of sets that they need to collect and go get that data specifically during the rain. They can run simulations, etc. So the cars are working. We can't claim that Waymo's approach doesn't work or that they have a data disadvantage. We can make the argument that in the March of nines, maybe Tesla's going to have an advantage, but that game is yet to be seen, right? That hasn't played out yet.
Great. Mike, did you have a question?
Thanks, Yaman. Sorry. Meta, can you elaborate on how Tesla polls the fleet in real time based upon triggers? Can you be specific and walk us all through exactly that process? I didn't understand when you commented on that before.
Sure. I'm going to describe a way it could be done, right? So conceptually, the vehicles are connected to the internet. They poll what's called, I believe, the mothership on a regular basis. And when the vehicle polls the mothership, whenever it's awake, whenever you turn on the car, etc., when it's on Wi-Fi, when it has signal, it can pull down a very small metadata config that just says, look for these scenarios, look for those scenarios. It might have flags that say, turn these triggers on, turn those triggers off. For more complex triggers, it might require a software update to roll out. And then after that, there'd be a flag that it just says, hey, turn this on, turn this off, maybe turn this on for an hour, turn this on for a certain period of time. And then statistically, if they have a certain volume of clips they want to collect, they can go ahead and reach out to a statistical number of vehicles that they know are likely to hit the mileage in that period of time and tell those vehicles for that period of time, turn the thing on. When that time elapses, those vehicles stop collecting that data. This helps them prevent excess bandwidth. There's also the fact that these vehicles need to connect to Wi-Fi, to the uploads, but all these expected probabilities can be calculated.
Okay, great. Thank you. If there's anyone in the audience who would like more clarification, please request to speak. We've already talked about these things before, so we're really doing this for the benefit of the audience.
Sorry, one optimization there. You could also make it so when the vehicle's ready to upload the videos that it's collected, it talks to the server and it says, hey, I collected for the following triggers. And the server comes back and says, I don't need the following triggers anymore, but the other triggers I'm interested in. So it's really about bandwidth management.
Okay. All right, point number 2 that Matthew made. Label data is the bottleneck, not data quantity. Training an AI data to be labeled, you can't just throw in a bunch of unstructured video data and expect the AI to figure it out. Tesla has an extensive data annotation operation, and it's always evolving, but it's still costly. All of these companies face a data annotation bottleneck. Even if every single Tesla car was capturing 10 minutes of high quality video from all 8 cameras, there would be no way for Tesla to label it that much faster than all its competitors. Let's start with Omar on that.
Yeah, so I mean, his points just make me realize how kind of out of date his understanding is. It is true that traditionally, to do, for example, object detection, you need to label a lot of data. But over time, that's become less and less true to the point where today it's really completely untrue. So, companies like Cruise and Waymo typically outsource their labeling to companies like Scale AI, which then outsource the labeling task with their data to, countries like Vietnam or whatever, and help them do this labeling. Tesla's always done the labeling in house. Over time, as they built a lot of label data, they created what was called an auto labeler. And that essentially allowed them to take all the labels and then train a much larger model. So, larger, more time consuming than what could run in the car and respond quickly. But it was then able to label that data automatically. And then humans just kind of had to give it a thumbs up. With the new V12 architecture, a lot of that labeling need has actually been eliminated because the labels are now the humans driving actions. So when you turn the wheel, when you push the pedal, those are essentially labels. The V12 system is trying to predict what control output, what steering wheel and pedal output will result given the images and other input that's coming in. So essentially, by doing a drive, you've automatically labeled it. The label is your own actions. So they can essentially take a clip and take the manual driving data that goes along with it. And that's the label to be used for training. You can call it more like curation. They have to find the clips and choose carefully what clips to put in the training set to get the model to behave the way they want. For example, you don't want to show it footage of people running a stop sign. You want to show it stopping fully to zero and then continuing, even though that's a very rare thing. And many other cases like that of unsafe or undesirable behavior. So really, you're curating the data set to show the behaviors that you want, but there's very little labeling as we understood it in the traditional sense, as Tesla and others have done in years past.
Meta, do you have any thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, so generally speaking, it's no longer labeling, but there is still a reward model that's being built, right? So they're still hand coding the policies for the reward model. So it's not totally free where you just dump the videos in and things get better. But Operation Vacation, the whole concept of automatic hill climbing, what that is it allows, once you've defined what you like, as an example, like Rohan, I think also mentioned it, right? You're optimizing for getting to the destination and safety as you define safety. As you keep changing these definitions, the system with more and more clips will figure out exactly how to maximize the score. So you can think of it like you have a game, you're defining the rules of the game, and the system will figure out how to abide by those rules. And you're just responsible for getting the rules right.
Yoda, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for people that work with AI, and myself included, uh, this is exactly the type of argument that gives too much credit to human work today. Um, in quotes, figure it out is actually exactly where the technology is going. Uh, on the tech side, you can certainly give a movie script to the AI and say, figure out who's the protagonist. That's simple. On the image side, you can say, figure out where are, let's say, the trees in a nature image. In e-commerce, you could say, figure out what are my conversion drivers. These things, AI is eating away all these mundane human tasks, and it's no different when it comes to video labeling. Obviously, Tesla isn't just throwing unstructured video data. These things are going to be structured, but this task is actually very doable.
Yeah, there was really a major shift. So instead of saying, okay, detect all the cars, predict all the bounding boxes of the cars, then do some type of planning and control algorithm, it's just, okay, here's the input of images, here's what the user did, construct your world model internally to be able to predict what that output actually is. So it's very different than kind of what they started out with.
But annotation still is not 100% fully automated, correct?
Well, I would say they don't do labeling and annotation in the traditional sense anymore very much. What they would do now, I would describe more as curation. The labelers are essentially told, look for 5-star Uber driver behavior. Look for stuff that an amazing professional driver would do. And that's what we want in our training set. It's
Well,
a little,
maybe you may not be able to. Maybe it would be nice if you could answer the question. If Tesla started using 1,000 times more data to train FSD, how many more people would it have to hire and train? Can you guys give me like an order of magnitude answer to that question?
0.
Okay, I mean that's all we need.
Yeah, well, so a caveat there. It's not the denominator it's not the function, the parameter of growth is not the data. That would be how many more machines they need or how many more compute cycles, depending on what they're doing with it, and bandwidth. The thing that is
I understand, but to the extent that this second point goes,
yes,
he's talking about label data is the bottleneck. And you're telling me that even if we were using 1,000 times more data to train FSD, we wouldn't need one more person to annotate.
however,
That
if you wanted to tackle 100 times more policies in parallel, you would need to increase your team.
what do you mean by policies in parallel?
Right. So when Omar says, drive like the best drivers, the word best is not something the AI understands. So you have to define what that best is. That's what the policies define. So you say good drivers don't have jerk over 6 meters per second cubed. Good drivers don't slam on the brakes faster than a certain amount. So you have to define all these policies. Good drivers don't stop at a stop sign for less than this much time or more than this much time. Good drivers respect what the cops are saying. So all these really complex things, especially if you think of Chuck's left turn, it's not just one policy. You have to say all these different policies with different weight. So you say it's much like after a certain amount of time waiting, you do have to go through the intersection, but you have to wait for the gap. You have to accelerate fast enough to get there. So it might be okay to violate the jerk thing just to get through the intersection. So there is complexity there, but it's at the policy level. It's not at the, in this scenario, do this.
Okay, Omar.
labeling has traditionally been the bottleneck. Like, it's a true point that, okay, you have a lot of data, but if you've only got one guy labeling it hypothetically, your training set's not going to increase that fast. But they've taken the bottleneck and they've broken the whole bottle. First with the auto labeling system that, you know, essentially 10x their output on labeling. But now with this new system, they don't even have to label anything. They just have to sort of give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it's also really impactful because anytime you label, you make mistakes, right? There's going to be some instances where things aren't labeled 100% correctly. So that poses a problem because it's hard for the system to sort of learn the signal when the signal is mixed in with some noise from incorrect labels.
Yeah.
I-
So I saw Meta disagree with you on that one. So let's see what. So right now we have a bunch. I mean, it's all bulls on the board, and unfortunately Matthew wasn't able to join today. So the more debate, disagreement we can have, the more we can dig into it a little bit more. So Meta,
I'm not disagreeing just to disagree, just to be clear.
I know. So what do you disagree with?
I make it clear when I'm playing devil's advocate. What I disagree with is I think we're overstating the effect. And the reason why I'm cautioning against overstating it is people are going to get disappointed later when they realize that the March of Nines is not linear, right? The reality here is that they got rid of labeling by removing they're moving down to the derivative of labeling, which is policies. So the way it normally works is you have policies, and then you have to create labels for examples of how to enforce the policy in order to learn each policy. Transformers allow you to remove the need to do that labeling, but the policy work still exists.
What does this policy work look like? What does this mean? I don't understand.
Good
Yeah, I
question.
don't understand what you're trying to say too, honestly.
Okay. So
And I think like it would be much better if you kind of just like dumb it down to fifth grader level.
all right, I'll try. Let's say there's a policy that says never go forward if there's a red light, and you get to a stop sign and there's a red light behind it, and the vehicle just stops there and never goes forward until the red light turns green, right? Like that was one particular issue that we saw. They might realize, oh, that policy was too specific. So we need to go in there and say, it's not never, it's like 90% of the time, don't go forward if there's a red light. There could be some exceptions. We're not going to tell you what those exceptions are, but you figure out what those exceptions are. And then there's another
machine.
policy. Oh, good.
Basically, instead of focusing manual labor on labeling, they have to focus on massaging what the data input is going to be. And it's not just like throw all this data in and you get the exact answer out. It's now what Meta's trying to say, oh, wait, we trained it this way and it's kind of working, but not exactly in these cases. So now it's what data, additional data do we have to throw at it in the exact form? And that you can
Well,
disagree
he doesn't
with it.
agree with you.
Well,
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you: do you agree with Meta's contention that if Tesla were to start training FSD with 1,000 times more miles, they would have to hire no more humans for annotation?
not for annotation, but yeah, I agree.
Okay, Meta, what do you disagree with? I don't know, Omar.
Machines almost right. The difference is you don't need people for the curation of the data. That's pre-transformer way of thinking. You need them for the curation of the reward model, which is part of test in traditional AI. Reward models don't exist in traditional AI. That's partly why I was asking Gordon, have you talked to somebody who's worked on stuff since policy optimization took off? Because it's a different form of doing AI.
Omar?
So, I mean, curation is the term for this that I've heard, the Tesla team use at CVPR. So they're essentially deciding what to put in the data set. And there's certain automated criteria, certain neural networks they may deploy to the fleet that are, serving as trigger infrastructure. But I don't think anybody here denies that auto labeling was probably a 10x improvement in labeling efficiency. And this is even bigger than that because you're just getting the labels directly from the human driving data. So I don't agree that it would be zero people. Um, but you don't necessarily need to, increase the team. They can just keep labeling and adding more and more data to the training set. If you wanted to, get a bunch more clips added to the data set and really advance the curation, you may hire more people. But the labeling overhead has shrunk dramatically compared to what it used to be.
Okay, machine.
I mean, I generally understand the difference between curation and policies, but I'm surprised, Meta, you think they're not changing the curation of their data with each training run? You don't think
No,
they're
no.
doing?
They might be. They might still be adding some triggers. You're correct there, but I don't think it's necessary. I think the policies, just changing the policies and not changing the data can lead to positive yield. I sent you an image, Yuman, if you want to throw it up. It's from the PPO paper, TRPO, IPO. All these policy optimizations are the same. And
that's fine. It's just, the thing is, like, we don't have to get from basically 0% understanding, like 20% understanding on average across the 1,000 people in here to 100% in one day. So we have to kind of, let's keep it going, and then kind of get to, like, okay, this is introductory. Then we can, in future spaces we can do intermediate, then advanced, like stage by stage. Otherwise, we're going to get bogged down on this one thing, and it's going to take like 5 hours, and we're going to get nowhere on the other points. Let's get Ashay's question first. Ashay, what's the question?
Okay, two questions. Number one, about labeling. The practitioners here might chime in. So there was the perception, part of like early FSD, maybe 3 years ago, where they came on stage and explained, the whole perception engine, and their, labeling was the only going technology, and we had manual labelers, everything else, right? So are you saying, Meta and Omar and others, that now that aspect of the problem has been solved and therefore you don't need labelers? Or is it the nature of the new end-to-end network that's changed that requirement? And I do agree with the direction of this discussion, but that was my first question. And how do you see that from there? But maybe I'll come back with the second one after
Okay,
this.
Yoda.
Yeah, maybe a easy way to think about it is that there was this physical aspect of labeling, which is a human getting hired, looking at a video clip or a frame, and actually identifying things and clicking on things to label that object. I think what we're trying to say is that that activity done by the human can now be done by the AI. Now, there's still an aspect of labeling, such as what do you do? Perhaps this is the policies. What do you do when you encounter a certain thing? There was a recent video where a car drove from paved road onto unpaved road because that's the only way to get around it. And so that is sort of a behavioral logic that still needs today humans to allow that to happen. But that's not the physical act of labeling, and I think that part has been automated.
Yes, I think in that sense, what Omar mentioned, that the user's input there is kind of your label, and I do agree with that. But that's on the planning and control side.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if there's anything more to be done on the perception side, right?
Okay, Omar.
So they didn't eliminate labeling. The labeler is you. Okay, the labeler is all 6 million people. Every time you move the wheel, you're driving manually, you're providing labels for the input data that's coming into your car. So it's not perception versus planning and control. It's all one thing now. So this is a major paradigm shift. So before they would say, okay, detect cars, detect lane lines, detect traffic lights. Okay. Now take all of that as input and then compute a driving policy based on everything you're seeing. So, okay, cars detected, stay away from that. Traffic lights detected, stop, go, whatever. Lane lines are detected, stay between the lane lines. And it's this very sort of robotic driving policy. Now, all of these detections, right? Because you're focused on these tasks in isolation, detect car, detect lane lines. And all of these are like flickering a little bit. They're not 100% accurate, but hopefully they're accurate enough. So you have all this kind of inaccurate data kind of moving around a lot, and you're trying to create a driving policy based on this. it was kind of a mess. So they said, wait a minute, why do we even need to do perception per se? Why do we necessarily care where the lane lines are in the car and we're feeding all this? Let's just say the output is to predict the steering wheel and pedal output. Here is the steering wheel and pedal output as labels, what a human would do. Here's the correct answer. Predict that. And the perception happens internally to the model. To take the images in and go from, image space to vector space to the planning and control output, that's still happening, but it's happening all inside the model rather than there being a separate perception stack that is then fed into the C++ code to do planning and control.
Meta.
So different things, but when you think of the perception, why there's an advantage of removing the perception stack, I don't think the disadvantages you're outlining are necessarily the reasons to do it, but you can think of it like when I'm doing planning, at the time I get to planning, I might want to ask questions about what I'm seeing that the perception stack didn't think about. Like, I've decided not to move forward at the stoplight, but is there a stop sign nearby? Oh, the stop sign's closer than the other one. I'm going to do a different thing. So that kind of reasoning is easier to do when you keep the perception data around rather than throwing it away after you've kind of encoded the things that humans thought were important. So that's a big advantage of the end-to-end network. But the policies during training still need to be written by humans. You can think of the policies as a one-to-one with triggers. It's not always the case, but think of a policy like someone says, did the car proceed after 5 seconds? Did the car get stuck for more than 5 minutes? Did the car stick out of the lane when it was making a left turn? And then what they can do is say, go into the fleet, and instead of having labelers find scenarios where these things are trading off against each other, find locations where these triggers are competing, because right now people are saying that's not working well. And then when that data comes back, that goes through without any human labeling, goes all the way through the system, and they can tinker with the policies to say, oh, be a little more aggressive, be a little more safe, make sure you get fully into the lane, whatever slight tweaks they need to do, and that automatically trains the
Thanks.
model.
Mike, can you repeat what Meta said?
I think I had a aneurysm listening to the last 60 seconds.
I think the entire space did.
Meta,
And I think people are really missing the points of this discussion here.
Meta is way too smart for.
Yeah, Meta is way too smart for this discussion. Omar?
Yeah, I thought he made a good point that, having it end to end, you get a lot more richness from the perception system. Like, for example, let's say you're saying, okay, stop at a stop sign when you see it. So now you're trying to detect stop signs. So you come up with this stop sign detector. But what if the stop sign just isn't there, or it's bent, or something happened where the stop sign detection model is not thinking it looks like a stop sign? But a human would still come up to that intersection and see stop signs on the other sides of the streets and maybe see the stop sign knocked over, or just say, just see that it's an intersection, and they would respond. So you're not just looking for the stop sign in a narrow way, but you're asking more generally, should I stop? Right.
Okay.
And so a lot more of that richness makes it from the perception down to the planning and control in a smooth way.
Stop.
Yeah, my ears are burning because it was my video that was the going off paved road onto a dirt road to get around a construction site. And I actually was surprised how much traction that video got. I suppose just having a
Scott,
shot.
what? Okay.
Yeah, and I can give you some background about that. You had a question, Yaman?
No.
Okay.
All right. Number 3 points. Tesla must predict things that competitors don't. Matthew says, LiDAR and geofencing get a lot of flack from Tesla fans. But those same fans often ignore that Waymo cars have 29 cameras. Waymo isn't filled with stupid people pursuing a busted strategy. They created the first real Robotaxi in the US, so clearly they must do something right. If Waymo could drop the LiDAR sensors on their car, they would do it in a heartbeat. But the LiDAR gives a critical data point, object trajectory. Using the Doppler effect, LiDAR can instantly measure which way an object is moving and how fast. Tesla is committed to its camera-only approach, which means that its models now must predict object trajectory and velocity. That's a big prediction that its competitors simply don't have to make. Geofencing gives another set of data: stop signs and lane markers and stoplights. Focusing just on stop signs are a thing that you just cannot get wrong. If FSD missed 0.001% of stop signs, that would still amount to hundreds of accidents and crashes per day. Waymo, Cruise, Zoox, and others don't need to predict where stop signs are. They've mapped them in advance and already know their locations. As a result, they don't need to predict stop signs, traffic lights, lane markers, etc. In contrast, Tesla must predict that these static traffic indicators and their predictions that basically need to be 100% perfect, or they will eventually bring liability to Tesla. All right, so he's basically saying in order to get to level 5, you have to have LiDAR and you have to have HD maps and geofencing. Omar, let's take it LiDAR first. So that was a long point. Why can't Tesla with cameras only replicate what LiDAR outputs?
Well, credit to Waymo. They've got a great service. I use it. But LiDAR is not necessary. It's, a laser that can accurately measure how fast you're going. But I, with my own eyes, without a laser, can see which way people and things are going and generally how fast they're going. And I know how to respond. Cameras have a fundamental advantage over LiDAR that a lot of people didn't realize. The LiDAR can super accurately tell me what the object is doing right now. But what deep learning can tell me is what that object is going to do in the future. Okay? So deep learning is the technique that can tell you what an object is going to do in the future. And for deep learning, you just need a lot of really, millions of clips that are very diverse, show variety, different weather conditions, etc. And that's very easy to do when you have a low cost sensor like camera that can generate a large training set very easily. With LiDAR, it's more difficult to do. So that ability to predict the future behavior of agents, yes, that car is going very fast towards the stop sign right now, but I see the stop sign, I see it slowing down, I see the car in front of it, I can predict that it's also going to slow down. And so therefore, it's safe for me to cross this intersection. So that's what I think he's missing. Deep learning and predicting the future are really key. LiDAR does have some extra accuracy, but the accuracy of computer vision has gotten so good that it doesn't really make a difference. I've driven in both. They both feel the same. When you go up to an intersection, it's not just, again, looking for that stop sign. It's seeing the other traffic in the road. It's seeing that it looks like an intersection, the shape of the road. It's all of these other inputs that you're seeing, not just the stop sign itself. So I think a computer vision system can be very reliable. And obviously, you can also still look at the map data. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it shows the stop signs and traffic lights on the map. We can always look at that too, but you want to have a foundational ability to just look at the scene and know how to move through it.
Meta.
100% what Omar was saying. The fact that the camera does reasoning, even if you use LiDAR input, you need to do reasoning. So it's not something that you don't need to do. The other thing is the argument that they would remove LiDAR in a heartbeat isn't true because they haven't solved the Waymo driving on all highways in all cities in all conditions. So they could remove it after they've done all that. But just like Tesla removed radar at one point once they had enough highway data and once they had enough information, Waymo's not at that point yet. Both Waymo and Tesla are trying to solve end-to-end highway driving. And whoever gets there first probably has an advantage because they don't need as much hardware and Tesla's already there. And then the last point here is the lidar predicting speed and all that. Cameras have been doing that for a very long time too. Like that's it's just not a very valid argument.
Machine.
This is where I guess I'll play devil's advocate a little bit and also kind of believe it. One, with respect to LiDAR, it it is true that in some aspects the LiDAR probably can give you a better estimate of depth and velocity of objects than cameras possibly could. I don't know what the latest is on the research, but that's definitely an area that it's possible that the addition of LiDAR can improve your perception, which maybe doesn't matter functionally for an L2 system, but when you're trying to get the disengagement rate down to such an astronomically low level to where just a few hiccups a year on a fleet of cars matters, that it may help. And so that is a possibility that cameras may not do that sufficiently well. We don't know. It's not really important today, but it is something to consider that to get to the highest level of fidelity that you may need other sensors eventually. That it's not like I'm not dissing cameras. Cameras are doing most of the work. Um, the other point is from maps. Sure, yeah, if you had a high HD map or any map information context, that would that improve the performance in certain cities if it's acting like the car's been there before? Yeah, I don't find that still to be a difficult problem for Tesla to add if they wanted to. I'm not saying, they could just feed in like little rudimentary maps and that are crowdsourced, and literally just feed it into the end-to-end neural net to help it kind of have a bias of expecting stop signs at certain spots. So I do believe, yes, like those could be things that Google Waymo has an advantage on, but I don't think ultimately it's not something that Tesla couldn't do if they chose to.
Omar.
I think it's always easier on to layer on additional sensor modalities rather than trying to take them off. I think Tesla systems overall just stronger having a foundation of a vision model that's good enough to drive the car on its own. And if, let's say, maps or sensors or anything offered some additional benefits, sure, you could layer them on, at least in some configurations, if there's a map available, if the car has that sensor hardware available, you can use those things. But let's say they fail. Let's say the map is incorrect, or for some reason a rock hits the LiDAR and it fails. Now you're falling back on a system that is intelligent at the core, that has these vision capabilities. And these are really the big reasons Waymo hasn't scaled, why they haven't been successful. I mean, imagine if they had made deals to get this included into every car, but they couldn't because of the need for pre mapping and the need for all this expensive hardware on the car, which isn't conducive to a low cost mass produced product. So these things have really been the biggest limiters of the project. And even if they're required, which seems less and less likely every day, I still think it makes sense to have the foundation of a really powerful vision model that is the base of the system. And if all else fails, you have this to rely on, and it's good enough to drive the car on its own.
Yoda, then Meta.
Yeah, LiDAR, the data from LiDAR is or can be helpful, but much like a backseat driver, it's helpful until you have an argument. So what happens when the camera system is telling you one thing and the lidar system is telling you another? It's the same as you're trying to go forward and someone in the back seat saying stop. And I think um, ultimately, if the camera system can be correct, then the lidar system could be actually a handicap that actually causes the car to behave in a confusing way. And then this is in addition to the cost of the unit, of course.
Okay. Meta, that machine response to Yoda.
I disagree with the idea that I know that it's popular to say that LiDAR and sensor fusion is hard, but we can see that Waymo's doing it. They have way more cameras. That's a lot more pixels. They have LiDAR coming in. So I think we should acknowledge that by using transformers early, Waymo was able to do sensor fusion where Tesla struggled. But the other side of it is when you look at map data, right? If you just used map data, then when a stop sign is seen that is incorrectly not present on a map, you have to rely on camera data anyway. So the deep reasoning stuff needs to be built anyway. Tesla's using the map data. So I think this point is just factually wrong, and that's the main problem with it.
Machine.
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with Meta. But I would just say, yeah, LiDAR. So what? If you can do deep learning properly, you can do deep learning not just with cameras. You can do it with LiDAR integrated. I mean, if you're saying you can't do it, then you're not good enough, basically. And Google's good enough. I mean, most of the Google Waymo employees are competent, I guess. I mean, I actually bought Google stock, like 3 weeks ago when it was dipped on the FUD, and it went up. That was a nice call. I'm more invested in Google than Tesla right now.
Irrelevant.
Did that just leave you speechless?
No, I'm trying to find a post. Number one, Tesla's data isn't as useful as it seems. We're not requesting any. We're not accepting any requests to speak right now. I think we already have yeah, we have enough. So in his number one point, there's factual misstatements here. It's not random data collection. They can actually seek out exactly what they need, kind of like Waymo in a different way though. And then number two, label data is the bottleneck, not data quantity. And we discussed and concluded that annotation of data isn't as laborious as it used to be. It's changed form and it's become a lot more efficient. So we don't need it's not as much of a bottleneck as it used to be. And at three, Tesla must predict things that competitors don't. We have a bit of a disagreement around whether we're going to need to add lidar. Machine thinks that Tesla might down the line, and then incorporate it into end-to-end neural network training eventually. Others think that this is not going to be necessary, that cameras alone will be sufficient. All right. Number 4, Tesla doesn't get as much data as it seems. The Tesla onboard computer is limited to a few gigabytes. The raw video from each camera is likely to be 1 gigabyte per minute, and no cellular network supports that level of upload bandwidth. As a result, Tesla can only get a few minutes of data per car per drive, versus competitors with hundreds of terabytes on each car to capture the entire drive. This can be easily verified by any Tesla owner. Just look at how much data is being uploaded by your car on your home Wi-Fi network and compare that to your own SD card data. The math is pretty easy, but variable from car to car due to frame rate and camera differences. Machine.
This might be my favorite one. I mean, basically, this guy's arguing against distributed data collection as if it's a bad thing. Basically, if you have a decent driving model to start with, then the majority of the drives aren't relevant. And you're only going to end up with a small sequence of time at which maybe something went wrong that you want to capture. And you have the model to be the initial discriminator to say, do I want to keep this or not? If the person takes over from the FSD driving, or if FSD is driving in shadow mode and there's a disagreement between the driver and what FSD predicted, only then could you possibly maybe want to keep the data. And so if you already have a competent model like Waymo does, then 99.9% of the time you're throwing out the data as is. So if you only have 100 cars on the street, like Waymo might, then they're basically out driving and not getting any useful data. Who cares if they have hundreds of gigabytes of disk space in the car? They're not collecting anything other than if they're doing intentional drives. So for Tesla, even if that limited amount of space, likely for each driver, as it gets better, they're probably not even collecting anything. And so I just find it odd because even if you have like space for 10 seconds per car, per drive, essentially, you could get one instance per car and you have 400,000 cars. You're saying per day, you're getting 400,000 clips per day is orders of magnitude more than Waymo is going to get per day. So I just find it egregious.
Omar, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's completely silly. Obviously, the requirements of this are not huge, right? You're really looking for the needle in the haystack. You're not trying to upload the entire guy's day of driving. You're looking for that needle in that haystack, that weird, rare scenario that causes the model to break. So, this could be 10 seconds, it could be up to a minute. It's not like some big data problem. We're talking about like a tiny little clip. The car computers have 64 gigabytes and now 128 gigabytes on the latest models, I believe, of onboard storage. And they come factory installed with attached USB storage that's used for dash cam. So they can save way more than they need. They've got a high bandwidth cellular connection on every car. Go do a speed test if you've got one of the latest Ryzen cars. You can get a very high bandwidth cellular connection. And they've also got Wi-Fi as well. So if you get home, they'll save it, wait until you get on Wi-Fi, and upload using that to save bandwidth. So, I mean, this is just kind of a silly one. The car computers have no problem taking a video clip that's 10 seconds to a minute, saving it and uploading it to Amazon S3 when necessary.
Yeah, we're not accepting any new requests to speak right now. We have enough on the board to tackle this. So at the end of his post, Matthew has one sentence summary for each point, and I'm gonna need one sentence response to each one. Okay, so we're gonna do that after Yoda speaks. Yoda.
Yeah, for Tesla owners who has activated the dash cam feature and Sentry mode, you could actually see this in action, whereby the recording loops over the same USB drive continuously. And so if and when something is worthy of getting sent back to the mothership, it's just that specific clip that gets sort of triggered and sent back. And yeah, so the physical onboard kind of storage space cannot be the bottleneck.
Okay, thank you.
If you need to free up space, it's easy. Just upload the clips and delete them.
All right.
Sorry, just one quick point. driving, as it turns out, is about deleting what just happened for humans. So on your next drive, for anyone out there, you probably can't remember the the last 20 seconds, who was wearing what color shirt, what car did you pass. Those things are actually forgotten by your meat brain on purpose, because the way we're driving, our brain's trying to actually forget almost everything.
All right. Number 1 point, Tesla collects data randomly. Its competitors collect deliberately. So this is factually wrong. Tesla.
That one wasn't factually wrong.
Okay, go ahead.
The deliberate part, their competitors do collect data deliberately, but Tesla collects a ton of data also deliberately.
Yeah,
So
there's
it is
nothing
factually
random
wrong
about
that
it.
Tesla collects data randomly. That is factually wrong, right?
Oh yeah, okay, that part is correct.
Okay. I'm typing up. Hold on.
Oh, are we helping you draft an epic response? Because that'll be fun to see.
It doesn't necessarily have to be epic. It just has to be concise, accurate, and relevant. We're not going for epic. We're just going for a good response that people can take. And I just want more people to be able to respond to Matthew type posts like this. All right. This is factually wrong, as Tesla also collects a ton of deliberate data by querying its fleet. Is that good enough? Is that good?
That is correct, yeah.
Now I need to look up how to spell query.
Query.
Query. Okay. 2. Tesla and its competitors face the same bottleneck, data annotation. More data does not mean more labeled data. What do you say to that in one sentence?
Neither Tesla nor its competitors are labeling data at this point.
That's not what Omar said. Omar said you're the laborer. Right, Omar?
Right. It's not labeling in the traditional sense. There's no annotator, drawing a box around a car.
So can we say data annotation is not a bottleneck for Tesla? Is not the bottleneck for Tesla?
The end-to-end approach eliminates this bottleneck.
Okay, perfect. The end-to-end approach eliminates this bottleneck. Okay, 3. Tesla must predict things that its competitors don't, notably object trajectory and static traffic indicators like stop signs. Machine, would you like to summarize this in one sentence, the response? Is Machine here still?
I see him unmuted, but we can't hear you, Machine.
No, he's not here. All right, Meta, do you want to take that one? One sentence.
Do you mind repeating the statement?
Sure. Tesla must predict things that its competitors don't, notably object trajectory and static traffic indicators like stop signs. So he's referring to the existence of lidar in one solution, and in Tesla's solution, not. So that plays into object trajectory that Tesla must predict that others don't, because they can observe it with lidar, and static traffic indicators due to HD maps and geofencing.
Both Tesla and its competitors must predict other things like future trajectories, and the machinery for that is the same.
The way I like to think about this is, if Tesla can accurately predict everything that's in Waymo's HD map, then they can drive the car just as well as Waymo. So if you can figure out most of that info from vision accurately, then you don't need an HD map, and you can actually just take Robotaxi coast to coast.
Okay. Meda, let me ask you this. Can Tesla predict and replicate what LiDAR outputs with cameras only today?
I believe it can, yes. They demonstrated this before where they did it in the cloud, and it would be very reasonable to assume now they can do it in the car because they removed a bunch of CPU out of the way.
Omar, do you agree with Meta?
Well, LiDAR is going to be more accurate at giving you the distance to objects around you, no doubt. But the AI models are getting really damn good, way better than anybody else thought. So the case for LiDAR is a lot less compelling. I mean, you look at these LiDAR stocks, they're totally in the dumps. The business case did not play out. Now, if you can give me a LiDAR that's $10 and doesn't use that much power, then sure, give me, 8 of them. Let's put them around the car. But that's not exactly the case today.
If I understand correctly, it's LiDAR is more accurate in scenarios that don't matter, like knowing the distance of a car within a couple of inches, but it's 100 feet away from you. You don't need LiDAR for that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had an issue where there was kind of like a trailer, a low-hanging trailer, and the vision system was driving towards it too fast. That's the kind of thing that LiDAR is really good at. But the model's getting so good that there really is no difference in the driving feel between a Waymo and a Tesla with vision. The difference is becoming minuscule very fast. So if you look at how deep learning is trending, you could say, okay, I don't really think this is that much of an issue in practice. As you said, yes, it may be a difference of a few inches, but the way you're driving, if you're doing it correctly, you're not even getting within inches of the thing. So it doesn't really matter in practice.
Okay.
It's also important to understand that LiDAR doesn't just magically tell you the trailer is there, right? It just tells you a bunch of points, and then a deep learning model has to reason about it. It can make the same mistake.
Irrelevant. Irrelevant. He's talking about object trajectory. He's not talking about identification.
I was referring to Omar's trailer example.
Okay, we're focused on Matthew's post and responding to this Matthew's post. Okay, we're not focused on getting every single fact in the world history of machine learning correct with paper spoiled. Do you guys agree with the following statement? Okay, so his number 3 is Tesla must predict things that its competitors don't. Notably, object trajectory and static traffic indicators like stop signs. How about this? Because it sounds like it's not there 100%, Meta. Although this is true, vision-only approach is closing the gap with LiDAR rapidly. How is that? Is that fair?
I mean, I would say that like relying on mapping is not a scalable approach to solving autonomy. If the map is wrong, you could have, catastrophic issues. So I think any true autonomous car really does need to perceive the world for itself. You can always layer on mapping as sort of a hint, but the ground truth has to be what you're seeing in front of you.
Mhm.
I also would just say that while it could be the case that cameras can't do what LiDAR can do, there's no evidence that that's the reality. So there's no evidence that LiDAR can do something cameras cannot do.
Okay.
When combined with the deep reasoning part.
I think
That should be implied.
number 4, Tesla isn't actually collecting as much data as it could be. That is true, but what's the point of that point?
Even the competitors that are collecting all the data are not using all that data. So there's really no difference.
I mean, this is a true statement, correct? Tesla isn't actually collecting as much as it could be. But I don't think this is a good
Why?
summary of
Because
his
of the
actual
car
4 point.
computer and its storage?
I mean, Tesla isn't uploading all the drive, right? So he's making a true statement. But the problem is the summary point doesn't actually summarize his number 4 point, which was the Tesla onboard computer is limited to a few gigabytes. The raw video from he says Tesla doesn't get as much data as it seems. No one claimed. So
The
I mean,
car computer is way more than sufficient to upload a few short video clips. They don't want the entire drive. They
Exactly.
want the needle in the haystack, and they have the trigger infrastructure to find exactly what they need.
He's also assuming that their competitors are dumb and they're uploading the entire drive. There's no evidence that they're doing that either.
I mean, I would think that they probably are saving the entire drive, but even just the same, they're still looking for the needle in the haystack in terms of that training set. And of course, Tesla has their own fleet too. Like a lot of these things that he says competitors are doing, Tesla's doing too with their own fleet. It's just that they have a fleet of customers in addition to their own fleet.
That's actually probably the stronger argument. We saw it with Chuck's left turn. What was that, if not Tesla doing it?
Exactly. You had a customer source an issue, and then they deployed their own fleet to tackle it and solve it. And then customers continue to drive it. These are all very weak arguments, just trying to justify Cruise's approach over Tesla when really there is no justification. Having a fleet of real vehicles and large scale seems to be essential to solving this problem. It's like they said in the book. We realized it only really started working when you put millions of clips in there. We realized this is something we can do that others can't. They can try and use the same approach. We've kind of given out the formula pretty openly, but actually building up the compute infrastructure and building up the training data set is time consuming and capital intensive.
Yeah, I think Tesla collects data with intent, that the data they collect is actionable for use for AI training and other purposes. They're not just collecting data for the sake of um, collecting the data. Omar, if Spider-Man had to lose one of his senses, would you think that he gives up the spider sense or his eyes?
I don't know how the spider sense really works, so that's tough. But I think this requires a lot of expertise too. There's a finite amount of expertise. Elon alluded to the huge talent war going on right now in AI. And this is really one of the most misunderstood technologies out there that I think is really going to surprise the world and surprise markets in a major way. So, I mean, even just reading this post from someone in the industry, and they really don't understand so many of these technical details. It's really eye opening.
Okay, I'm gonna read this one more time, and I'm gonna send it unless if somebody strongly objects. Okay. So his first point: Tesla collects data randomly. Its competitors collect data deliberately. Response: This is factually wrong, as Tesla also collects a ton of deliberate data by querying its fleet. I'm gonna read a ton of. Tesla also collects deliberate data by querying its fleet. Number 2, Tesla and its competitors face the same bottleneck: data annotation. More data does not mean more label data.
I would say for
Res-
number one,
Mhm.
Tesla does not collect data randomly. Their trigger infrastructure allows them to source exactly what they're looking for from their massive fleet of 6 million real customer cars. And yeah, that's how they're able to very deliberately collect data, and that they have their own fleet, but they just have a large customer fleet in addition to their own fleet of cars. As a matter of fact, I bet you that Tesla's company-owned fleet is probably bigger than Waymo's and Cruise's.
Tesla does not collect data randomly. It also collects deliberate data by querying its large fleet of 6 million cars.
I wouldn't
Okay.
say also. I don't think anything they do is really random. I would say they don't collect data randomly. Their trigger infrastructure allows them to deliberately source exactly the clips they're looking for from the customer fleet and their own Tesla owned fleet.
You could just change it to they're not collecting it randomly, they're doing it very deliberately and saving on bandwidth.
Through their trigger infrastructure. I think that's a key thing to mention. Then they can look it up and see tech talks about that. Like Karpathy said, I think we have the world's biggest database of stop except on right turn. Signs that say stop except on right turn. So they notice that there's a failure in the data set. The car's stopping when it doesn't need to. They notice people are always pressing the accelerator when the car starts stopping. So they say,
Okay.
what's going on here? Then they
Number
then
one,
they query the data set and they say, give me more stop except on right turn.
Tesla does not collect data randomly. Its trigger infrastructure allows Tesla to deliberately collect data by querying its fleet of 6 million plus cars. Number 2, Tesla and its competitors face the same bottleneck: data annotation. Tesla's end-to-end approach has dramatically reduced this bottleneck. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
want to say eliminate unless you guys are convinced I eliminated the bottleneck.
I'm convinced you no longer need to do labeling. So you could say it's eliminated the bottleneck.
Omar, do you agree?
I mean, yeah, it's been practically eliminated. It's not zero, of course, but compared to what it was like when people were manually annotating, it's a game changer. It's day and night.
Okay, essentially eliminated. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is turning into United Nations resolution. I feel like I'm in the Model UN class or something. All right, 3, Tesla must predict things that its competitors don't. And we said vision-only approach is rapidly closing the gap with LiDAR, and relying on HD maps is a handicap, not a benefit, because ground truth changes. Okay?
I would maybe just simplify it by saying everybody needs the ability to predict what's going on. Nobody can fully rely on the map, and mapping limits the scale.
You could try it also as when there's an error in the map, it doesn't fix itself either. So you're not going to get 100%
That's
either.
what I said, because ground truth changes, I said.
Sure.
You
I was
guys
trying to
see
remove the
how
word ground truth.
you guys see how frustrating this is? Meta is the lidar 1, Omar's lidar 2, and
Yeah.
Yaman, you are the camera.
No, he's doing sensor fusion.
I'm trying. Maybe this was the bad approach. Maybe this wasn't a good approach. I'm going to think about this. Maybe I should have. I'm going to think about this. 4, maybe I should just remove the LiDARs.
I was going to say you need to just be more of a dictator and decide. Just call it a day.
I know. I tried to do a bit more consensus, but
Consensus is
I mean,
considered
it's
lose
not
lose.
really that important that we even respond to this guy.
I know.
so-
But I want to kind of build a process, a system that's efficient, that teaches hundreds of people, or thousands of people that listen to this, and they can respond to these things, as well as, instead of just like a handful of people who can respond in a complete way. If thousands of people can do it, then we don't even have to have the space. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even have to have this discussion at all.
You should start a course and call it FUD Fighters.
Like, this person's post should not get 90,000 views, as wrong as it is, because it should be like, people just know it's wrong. So what's the point?
Actually, that's a good point. Do you think it should be community noted?
No, he's stating his opinion. A comment should suffice.
And then number 4, he said Tesla isn't actually collecting as much data. FSD computers enough to collect and upload the amount of data Tesla needs today, and Tesla never claimed to be collecting the entire drive. Okay?
Yes.
All right. Done. It's not going to be perfect. And this took us an hour and a half.
To be fair, I don't think we were all on the same page about trying to be efficient.
And we lost half the audience. That's okay.
I think people probably just wanted to hear us argue and maybe talk about the Tesla Model 2.
Right. Yeah, there's always, there's always a kind of bit of a push and pull between, do you want this space to be informative or entertaining? So it's always a balance. Grant? Do you guys see Grant as a speaker?
No.
Okay. How about now?
No.
Yo, this is I miss Gordon. All right. Steve says I replied. I saw Steve's reply, but if I remember correctly, he only said something about the first point. Amy says, event cameras for faster and efficient motion detection autonomous event cameras. Maybe if Amy can come up and tell us about it. Johnny coming up. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Johnny.
Hey, just want to say, Elon texted or tweeted Tesla Robotaxi unveil 8.8.
Oh, wow.
30 seconds ago.
All right, here you go. At the top
I'll
of our
drop
screens,
down.
Tesla
Thanks, everyone.
Robotaxi on. Thanks, Johnny. Tesla Robotaxi unveil on August 8th. Omar, initial thoughts?
Initial thought is let's fucking go.
I'm getting a birthday gift.
Is that your birthday? All right.
It's
There you
within
go.
2 days of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yoda, what do you think?
Thank you, Reuters.
That's probably that's a good thought, yeah. Maybe this was the thing that leaked accidentally and just got telephone gamed up.
It probably does mean though that there is a prioritization to launching the Robotaxi variant first, and not the supervised variant that has, let's say, the steering wheel might be taking a back seat.
It could also just be the same vehicle.
Yeah, obviously it's the same platform. And yeah, obviously we don't know whether there were two variants and how distinct they were and how that impacted like production lines and so on. So yeah, this could be the same vehicle, but also it could be some sort of prioritization to the Robotaxi variant.
Gideon.
Yeah, thanks, Yaman. Well, the stock aftermarket jumped like crazy. Or, yeah, pretty crazy. But I have one question for Omar or for Meta. The other day we saw some videos from Ashok where he showed some edge cases. And we see a woman raising her hand to a Tesla. That's definitely deep learning, I think.
Yeah, there's been some back and forth around whether FSD recognizes hand movements. What do you make of Tesla posted? Let me get the exact wording right here. Don't want to misquote the company. But quite a few people objected to this. Slowing down for pedestrian and taking their gestures into account before proceeding. What do you make of this post?
So they are starting to tackle it. It'd be strange of them to say that they're doing it otherwise. But remember, even when they started with stop signs were missed for a period of time. This is a probabilistic thing. It just means that it's going to, with higher and higher probability, respect what pedestrians are saying when appropriate.
Omar.
I have seen it appear to respond to hand gestures at times. in one of my recent videos, there was a guy who started crossing the street. Then he saw my car. He backed off. He moved back towards the side of the road and he motioned me forward to continue. And the car continued. I'm not sure to what extent the hand gesture impacted that. If he hadn't done the gesture, would it do that? But you remember when Elon was talking about this in the live stream, he said, we didn't teach it to stop at stop signs. It just started doing it because it noticed that's what people are doing. So it can pick up on all kinds of things. Now, someone may say, well, I saw someone make a hand gesture and it didn't respond correctly to that hand gesture. That may be the case. They may need to put in additional data about hand gestures to get it to human level performance. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to see it actually incorporating hand gestures in some way because it has sort of an end-to-end model of predicting what the human is going to do. And it's actually extremely impressive. You can have a human who's facing the crosswalk but isn't going to cross and it knows not to slow down too much, yet it can figure out things like even before I see somebody who's about to run out, it sees them, or a motorcycle, what they're going to do. So absolutely, it wouldn't surprise me that it's already taking hand gestures in to some extent. And I would think that if the Tesla account posted something, they might check with the team, or the team might say,
Exactly.
hey, it's
Yeah.
not doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
And this has been up for
Amy,
21 hours now. So
yeah, I
We
was gonna
also
say,
saw
like they would have taken it down if that wasn't the case.
we also saw the example where when we went to go pick up Machine and he waved, like it for sure was pulling up behind a car, saw him waving, and then pulled around the car and pulled up to him. That could simply be done by trying to minimize accelerator presses, and it just emergently learned this.
yeah, it did seem to do that when
So
we picked up Machine. It saw him wait. Well, it felt like it saw him waving and then moved closer to him.
He was
But it
waving
probably,
something.
yeah. Sometimes it just kind of tries to pull over, then moves a little forward, then pulls over. So it could have nothing to do with Machine, but it's possible that there was some type of emergent behavior there.
Amy,
Yeah, this is event cameras. They're pretty impressive. I saw a robot catching a ball that was in this autonomous drone video presentation that was at the NVIDIA conference. So I don't know the details on everything with event cameras, but there's so much that we can do with cameras, apparently.
it's lit.
Hey guys, so I work in the tech space, and I have these conversations with people, and even being in this tech space, you realize like how many folks are so disconnected from Tesla's great capabilities. And I was talking to a group of folks yesterday, and I told them the FSD is taking me to places. Um, and I was showing them videos and going to the store back and forth, and their intervention. So what I did learn that recently Tesla has taken all of the data that they had from FSD or prior to that they collected off AWS and moved it into their private data center. So that really helps us really understand that they're making great progress because they want to
Okay,
keep that.
thank you. So you're welcome. So we got some news. We're talking about a couple of different things, but obviously the big news right now is Tesla Robotaxi unveil on August 8th. What are your initial thoughts on this?
Crazy on timeline of events today. Hugely bullish, obviously. This completely clears up that sort of story from earlier, I think, except for the lower cost part with the EV with the steering wheel. Still, that's sort of still unclear, but maybe we'll get more clarity on the Q1 earnings call. But yeah, the stock's up like 2.5–3% after hours on that Elon post. And this is hugely bullish in that this tells us they progressed well with the platform. I think they had alluded to that they were really far along with it and in the development process in January. And if they're ready to unveil it on August 8th, I still think it's a little early to unveil it. I kind of wish they just waited till next year, but either way, Super bullish, I think. That's awesome.
Machine, what do you make of the after hours price action?
I'm trying to. Well, first of all, I'm glad I closed my puts. Good timing. And I'm wondering how much is confidence in the platform moving along versus confidence in the software, the FSD software. I'm not sure. Um, I am. I don't know how to make a bet on that. I'm curious though on the date. How do they select this date this far in advance? I know 8 is a very lucky number in Chinese culture, I believe. So is there something related there that it's 8-8?
Yeah, I believe 888, when you say it in Chinese, sounds like good luck.
I think
Can you
Elon
say
just
it?
drew a super exponential curve on the FSD miles to disengagement graph and said August 8th is when we cross. What do you think of that one?
Stick to hosting.
I mean, we have to remember this is a vehicle that's going to start production in late 2025, 2026. So I think it's not so much a question of where the software is by the unveil as just them having a design they want to show off for what their vision of a Robotaxi without controls looks like.
Do
And
you
I
think
think
that
the version of controls will have its own unveil, but be built on the same production line, so to speak.
do you think they'll unveil it at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m.?
8:88 p.m.
We're gonna have to invent a whole new clock.
88 miles an hour is like Back to the Future too. Maybe it's a Back to the Future reference.
Well, let's go to someone reasonable. Grant.
Hey, yeah, just providing the bear perspective. I think it's a stock pump. I mean, I don't expect, to Omar's point, that they'll have something that they're going to be able to roll out near term. I think the regulatory question will be an interesting one. We'll see what it is. I maybe the only other thing I'll flag is I'd be curious to see if this is kind of a bait and switch of sorts, where it's like, this is the Robotaxi, you guys have full self-driving supervised.
Machine.
I have been struggling the last few days on kind of understanding the trajectory of the company because it seems like most bulls and the CEO have moved on from
Can we have like 10 minutes of optimism
fine.
and just
Go
happiness,
back.
bliss? Ignorance is bliss for 10 minutes.
Get back to
And
me.
then and I'm just kidding. Keep going. Keep going.
Everyone seems quite comfortable from just moving on from valuing the hardware, automotive hardware part of the company as a growing value, and they've just completely moved on to who cares as long as FSD moves on. So and now you have these rumors coming out of accelerating the Robotaxi platform, putting back the 25K model, and from the again Rorschach test. If you're bullish, you're like, wow, this is great. FSD is moving along. They must be very confident. There's a ton of potential money to make. But on the flip side, if you're bearish, of course, you may interpret it differently. And if you're someone like me who's more just kind of like, what's it going to do to the stock price in the next year? It kind of makes me hesitant because what it's signaling to me is one, that I think there is partially what Grant was saying, some move to our earnings aren't looking too good. So let's kind of showcase what's next. And two, institutional investors aren't yet on board with robotaxis. They're not on board yet that Tesla's made it far enough along to where they would value that with a high probability of success. So if you move to that being your future valuation, in the near term, I'm afraid it might cause a significant valuation reduction. Whereas long term, you might be okay. But near term, that would make me even more hesitant on buying the stock until there's a big dip.
Omar.
Well, I think the most significant aspect of this is that we're seeing the first vehicle unveiled on the next gen platform. Now, the low IQ take on this is going to be, oh, self driving doesn't work. Da, 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 da. But that's not the point. They have a next gen platform here where their goal has been to cut half the cost out of the 3 and Y platform. A lot of people say, oh, well, if you solve autonomy, you don't need a low cost vehicle, so they're just going to cancel it. But that's not actually true. A low cost vehicle has almost the same value as, say, a 3 or a Y, because the average trip is just one person or some packages or something. So it can actually fulfill most of the workload. But if you can just drive down the cost per mile as much as possible, you got a smaller vehicle, it requires less battery, but because it doesn't have any controls, you can use all that physical space and actually create a pretty roomy experience for that one person or two people. So if you can, essentially build twice as many cars for the same amount of money, then the value of the autonomy essentially doubles. So it's really important. But if they are setting up the production for this, if they're installing the line in Austin, they're making progress on it, they're getting it to work, that also means that they're going to produce the compact crossover van, other vehicles on this platform as well. And you look at the situation today where you have companies in China that are serving the lower end of the market, companies like BYD, companies like, the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, that type of thing. And Tesla is outselling them. They're the number one EV producer in the world before they've even entered this segment. So just imagine as this actually starts to get into production what it's going to do. But they may have realized that it may actually make sense to start ramping with a Robotaxi vehicle because those are probably higher value. And then as they sort of get into higher volumes, maybe they could start producing the compact on the same line as well.
Meta, then Charity Traders, then Dallas.
I just wanted to file a complaint in your comment section about how Elon doesn't pay attention to Tesla anymore. He barely ever tweets about it, and if only he would do that, it would really help.
Duly noted. Charity?
What's going on, everyone? We need to get some energy here. This is so exciting. The one thing I'm going to say is that every single influencer that you guys follow who have doubted the Robotaxi and autonomy thesis, you guys should unfollow them. They are all charlatans. You guys have no idea what's coming. Run the math. Look at the work that CERN has done. Everyone should follow CERN. And be excited. This is huge. This is massive. I mean, I've worked in the on-demand space for years and the autonomous space. People who work at Cruise, there's been several people here on this space in the last couple of days that have been talking about robotaxis, regulation, data, and all that. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have all failed. They are incumbents, and they have no idea what's about to come. Uber is dead. Lyft is dead. It's going to take a year or two. It doesn't matter. If you run a DCF and you look at the math, everything has changed. So good luck, everyone, and cheers to the real bulls as opposed to the fakes.
Machine, I think that was for you. So I'll give you a chance to respond.
No one doubts the Robotaxi math if your software is capable of robotaxis. I don't think anyone here would dispute that. The question is, nothing's changed, because the question is, when will Tesla have software that's good enough for robotaxis? And V12 is obviously a promising move, and we're all tracking that acutely. But it's still multiple orders of magnitude away, disengagement-wise, from robotaxi. So the question is, will it be ready by the time the robotaxi vehicle is out? And that is speculative, and something that is essentially it's like venture capital now, where you're betting on a company for this high risk, high reward nature, which, if you're off by a few years, could cause a lot of loss in capex. So, I'm bullish in general, but I don't know about the timing.
blah 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 blah.
I think you exaggerated the downside there a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we have in this space, especially lately, we've had a number of bears, conservative bulls, a
Like-
variety of views, and as my pinned tweet shows, this space welcomes both bulls and bears. Grant,
Wait, can I say something quickly?
yeah,
So, blah, blah, blah. It's yada, 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 and cha, cha, cha. You know what? You probably missed the real run up in Tesla stock from 2019
okay.
because you were in high school.
let's not
Lol, you want to see some screenshots, buddy? Have you ever made $4 million in a day? You have not. You trade puts with what, $20,000? Shut your mouth, punk.
Okay, Grant.
Yeah, I would agree with some of what Machine's saying, and I think that as we saw with the Europe announcement and clarification from some folks on the Tesla team the other day, it's not enough that the software be ready. It's also a requirement that regulators be comfortable with it and the whole approach and the vehicle and all of that. So that's an important consideration. And then I would just double down on what Machine said as well when it comes to the way that this stock is shaking out and the way that different groups of investors are going to think about it. There is not a bailout in the form of a 25K vehicle coming. I mean, maybe that's the Robotaxi, but who knows when that might happen. It feels to me like the stock is increasingly a call option on FSD, let me be more specific, Robotaxis. I think there might be some incremental value coming from the improvements in V12, and I think more people will hopefully pay for it. That makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like a $500 billion bet on Robotaxis coming to market. And it's interesting. Okay. It's going to divide investors.
Ranger the dog asks the question that was on my mind and says, why unveil the Robotaxi if it's not going to production right away? Doesn't this have the potential to hurt sales? Omar, and then Meta, and then Yoda, then Dallas.
Well, I'm not even sure this car is really legal to sell, right? So you look at Cruise trying to get an exception for their origin vehicle, and I don't think that exception was ever granted. So there may be some regulatory movement that's needed here. I don't foresee them showing off a driverless robotaxi really affecting the sales of, the cars with controls you can buy today. I could be wrong. But I also think that, as Grant said, a lot of people will be divided on this. But the work they're doing into setting up production for the next gen platform, I think there's a really strong amount of overlap there between this no controls concept and the compact crossover they're going to do. So I wouldn't view it as really at odds with each other, but really something where they have the flexibility to produce both on the same line.
Okay. In the meantime, Tesla stock is up 4% after hours now. 4% after hours. Meta.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, 12.3 has rolled out. They have actual data about the intervention rates after this approach went out. They internally saw their intervention rates, then it go out externally. They're working on other models internally. This is not like previous rollouts. They may actually have good insight into the trajectory of the burn down chart here.
Yoda.
Yeah, I think this announcement is super important and bullish because it brings that second growth wave that we've been hearing about into life and into a timeline. So essentially, the Robotaxi will be that second growth wave. Right now, we're in the trough, but now we have that line of sight. Elon can always be, late, Elon time. But that I think the August 8th does not create an Osborne effect because the initial batch of production are obviously not in volume and likely going to be a special type of vehicle that requires, let's say, potentially even sort of operators like public transportation, whereby basically a regular consumer cannot buy that initial variant.
Dallas.
kind of tagging off of what you just said there, curious what you guys think on being the immediate customer base of this Robotaxi. I mean, are we going to see fleets of Uber branded Robotaxis driving around the cities, or do you think this will be more so, Tesla fanboys buying it to have a car that drives them around town? Thanks.
Omar?
Tesla fanboys, love that.
Well, I think pretty much anybody will be able to buy it who needs it. I can think of certain use cases, like say maybe you run a resort or something and you need a shuttle. Certain use cases like that are well defined. I think Tesla could also, potentially operate a fleet of them themselves. So I think it will be interesting. A lot of people have debated whether they would even sell these at all or just maintain them entirely themselves. I think they will sell them, but also maintain their own fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Shane.
The great Stephen Yutzi has said, quote, bulls, including myself, need to admit that the downside scenario has increased, all else equal, the last 6 months. 3 years ago, every bull said Tesla will make billions of dollars without FSD, and if they solve FSD, it's an upside call option. Now, the entire position is a call. What do you think about that?
That's not true. That's not true. I mean, that's just not true. Wait, did he say DM that to you?
No.
Tesla does make billions of dollars. What are you
He tweeted
talking
me.
about?
But
They
I
already
think you
make
get the
billions of
gist
dollars.
of his point instead of taking it literally, looking at the number. Do you think
I mean,
Tesla's moved to a more high risk,
no,
high
I don't think
return?
so. No, that makes no fucking sense. Not to, but yeah, I think people are missing the fact that interest rates are unlikely to stay here. Interest rates will decline, and order rates will increase even without Robotaxi FSD scenario in the future. Like, this is not a steady state. I mean, unless he's arguing that, I'm not sure. But Powell says these are restricted interest rates right now, so they're going to come down, and orders will increase regardless. So to base, like I would caution people against basing Tesla's intrinsic value and their forecasts on the current rate of interest rates, current prices, margins, etc. This is, I think, in my opinion, this is a temporary situation. Omar?
Yeah, I would agree that we're seeing some cyclical weakness here, and people are a little bit less rosy now just due to that. Others are pulling back, other automakers are rolling back investments. They're saying they want to do hybrids. But there'll be periods in the future where the EV business looks very rosy. Cybertruck's ramping, it's a huge hit. This next gen platform is on the market, whatever, and people will feel more positive about the business. But it does seem like automotive is not going to be the primary earnings driver. Some of these other things will. Now, I think just going back to the Robotaxi unveil, I think it's an important milestone to the next gen platform actually entering production. If you remember what Elon said on the most recent earnings call, he said by the end of next year, we want to start getting this thing into production. Naturally, you'd want an unveil sometime before that. They're doing this unveil on A8, basically 4 or 5 quarters into the future. They're supposed to start production if you go off the timeline he expressed at the last earnings call. So it is kind of a milestone. I think you want to see like some idea of what that vehicle looks like. You can't keep it secret forever because eventually it's going to get out. People are going to see them in parking lots and stuff like that. So I would expect a reveal for other vehicles built on the platform to follow. Maybe a van, maybe a 25K compact crossover. But it might make sense to do those unveils closer to the start of production to avoid Osborning the Model 3 and Y too much.
Meta and then Penny.
Given the leak that happened with Reuters today, it's possible this came from like a supplier, or it could just be that they're trying to control the fact that, hey, if it's going to leak anyway, it's time to, start moving on this. I think that's partly why they announced these things before, is because they know it's going to get out there anyway and rather control the message. Given that it's on 8.8, I don't think it has to be in the United States or in Europe. It could also just be in China or any government that's friendly, like Dubai or other countries. There's, well, regions, whatever, might be open to allowing robotaxi first. So I think we have to think about this from a global level.
Can you guys see? Oh, there you go. Penny, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, sorry I bugged there for a second. Had to switch off my Wi-Fi. I joined because I saw the announcement. I was just super excited and wanted to hear what everyone had to say. So far, I agree with just about everything Omar said and Meta said. I mean, I personally haven't been as excited about a Tesla announcement since maybe like the first time that they talked about Optimus. I think the fact that this is imminent, just 4 short months away, is like as good a news as I could ask for today. So just really excited and wanted to participate.
Thanks for stopping by, Penny. Always good to have you here. Dave, did you have anything to say?
Yes, sorry. I'd walked away from your computer a bit. So, I was just thinking that there are actually 2 components to Robotaxi. One is the car, of course, but the other is the whole program and having actual details around that. So when he says there's going to be an unveil, it could be just simply the unveil of the program and maybe with some prototypes sitting there. I agree with the former speaker who said probably was not going to cause warning. But prior to starting the program, you're going to want people to know what the program requirements are going to be, because there'll probably be some sort of inspection on the vehicles or something like that. And so there could be all sorts of things going on.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Amy?
Yeah, they have been working on the car, right? The Robotaxi car for a while now, correct?
Yeah, I think he announced a couple of years ago on stage, was in investor relations, that he talked about how they're designing, work on the design for the Robotaxi car.
Yeah, so the design should be
Purpose-built
pretty far
Robotaxi, I
along.
think he called it.
Yeah, design should be pretty far along, right?
Right.
So now that the software is looking better, which I'm really impressed, yeah, I'm excited too to see this.
Yoda.
Does anyone not expect to see at least a prototype? Like the Cybertruck unveil, they had a prototype. They didn't for the first Optimus, but that wasn't really the unveil. That was just AI day or whatever. I got to expect that there's gonna be probably a Robotaxi there, and that they'll be doing drives in it on the unveil. Am I like being overly optimistic with that point of view?
Omar?
This is 100% a new vehicle that they're unveiling. So this is the dedicated Robotaxi. Any other vehicle would still be able to pick up passengers, give rides, at least theoretically. But this is a vehicle that's purpose built to be a Robotaxi. It's not going to have a steering wheel. It's not going to have pedals. It's not necessarily going to have the same interior layout you would see for a car. So I think just seeing Tesla's vision of what that looks like is going to be really exciting. Now, they also have said that this is going to be smaller than the 3 and Y. So we're really talking about a car that's smaller in size to the 3 and Y, and that's going to be their dedicated Robotaxi. It's a very different approach compared to if you look at, say, for example, the Cruise Origin or the Zoox car or other driverless car prototypes where they've really done this big boxy design. They're focusing on something smaller that I think is going to be optimized for really the 1.2 average number of people per ride that's typical in rideshare today. So this is a new vehicle that, they may have more details about how the Tesla network will work or some details like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But this is going to be a new vehicle unveil and the first vehicle built on the new next gen platform. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them talk about the production process involved as well, and how revolutionary it's supposed to be compared to the old manufacturing process.
Thank you. Just a quick housekeeping item. If you enjoy this space and would like to support it, the Patreon link is at the top of your screens. And to those of you who are in the audience who have previously spoken very negatively about this space, I say welcome. ACDC, go ahead.
Thanks, Javon. So I'm just going to share what I think this unveil could look like. I personally don't think that there's enough time to reveal a new concept vehicle or another vehicle, right? I think the Model 3, Model Ys have all the capacity, everything, the entire hardware, and now the software will be ramped up by that time. And all you need is a Tesla app to basically behave as an Uber app, okay? And that can be easily done. And you operate this fleet as a Robotaxi. And you don't need, Tesla doesn't need their own fleet. It's the owners who will volunteer, whether it's 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week, for their car to run as a Robotaxi. So conceptually, that's the concept. And once that concept takes place, in the background is the regulatory part of it being worked out. And if the demand is worked, the concept works, that's where they have now a strong footing for the Model 2 coming out and an expansion of their Robotaxi. So that's my thinking. I would love to hear others' views.
Ahmed?
Hey guys, thank you for inviting me up. I mean, I think, and I've been thinking about this a long time, right? I think he'll unveil the network and how it works, right? So similar to what ACDC was saying, but I think alongside with that, he's always showing things that are 2-3 years out. It'll probably be a model type of car that's designed specifically for robo-taxiing, where when you take out the driver, the seats no longer need to face front; they could face each other. You have ample room. You don't have to have the same design as the car was. So I think it's going to be like a multi-year type of products that are going to be revealed, or at least that's what I'm hoping for. One that says, okay, you could put your cars on the network immediately if you're an owner, or maybe not immediately, but within the year when FSD is shored up. And then the other is, we're also going to develop these special vehicle cars only meant for robo-taxiing. Those are my thoughts.
Yoda. Omar.
I just want to reiterate that this is going to be primarily a vehicle unveil. Some of those other details may be discussed, but this is primarily going to be an unveil of the first vehicle built on the next-gen platform. It's designed to be half the cost to produce compared to a Model 3 and Y. So I think that's arguably the most significant part of the whole thing. And it's expected to start production 4 to 5 quarters after the unveil. So we're not talking about something that's years away. Finally, I'll say you're going to hear a lot of skepticism about the foolishness of working on a robotaxi platform before the software is capable of driverless operation. But when we're talking about a vehicle that's going to enter production in 2026, if they're not planning for driverless, they're not really doing their jobs at all.
All right, if I move anyone down, it's not personal. There's just a bunch of people request to speak, so that's all. Yoda?
Yeah, I think we could probably refer back to all the product unveils to get the full range of how much detail is included, including the chance for, in this case, maybe commercial customers to pre-order the robo taxis, as fleets, as Omar mentioned before. But yeah, just to caution that there's that range of kind of the best case where maybe there is a reservation for the commercial customers, all the way to
In some cases in the past, there's been sort of sparse details that nothing to sort of action on. One thing though is that this unveiling will have to include a demonstration of the albeit recorded, obviously of FSD in action, and I think in that particular case we're going to see the latest and greatest, not what's available for owners today, but actually the newest and the latest version.
Grant, and then it's lit.
Yeah, more of a question for the group. I'm curious how much you think a Robotaxi owner could reasonably expect to earn in terms of passive income, and then why Tesla wouldn't choose to own their own fleet based on that number and capture all that value.
Just a quick note of thank you to Hollis and Mika Kriwicki, who just joined Patreon, and also Andreas Kansley Knudsen also joined as well. Thank you very much, guys. The link to the Patreon is at the top of our screens. Omar.
So, hey guys, I was gonna add. So it's funny when I
Omar.
I think Tesla threw out a number in 2019 of maybe $30,000 of gross profit in an urban area at 50% utilization. So maybe adjust that up for inflation. I mean, Waymo here is charging like $10 a mile in San Francisco. So I think it depends, but obviously for Tesla, just selling the vehicle, they may choose to maintain some of their own fleet. I think for testing, maybe going about it in a Waymo-like way where they have a company-owned fleet, that's the initial driverless fleet, that may be something they choose to do. But I do see them selling it as well. I think someone might buy one of these vehicles just to use for personal use, right? Just to take the kids to the school or whatever, but they should also be able to join the network and uh, do it that way. And I really like this sort of franchise model. It's worked really well for Uber, where they don't have a huge sort of capital outlay to build out the fleet. The customers are sort of your partners. They're bringing their own car, their own insurance. They're managing the costs in a fixed way that is not really a liability to Uber. They're just taking a certain percent off the top and letting the driver handle all the costs. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that model, and obviously they have the right of first refusal on any car that comes out of the production line.
It's lit.
Yeah, hey guys, it's so funny. I saw Elon's tweet while sitting in an Uber from the airport back home, and I take an average of maybe 3 to 4 rides um, every like a week or to a week and a half ish. And I see maybe some sort of a partnership with someone like Uber. You guys remember not too long ago they were offering discounts to Uber drivers to buy these cars. I think it was on a Model 3 and Model Y. So I definitely see something like that coming. And I always think of this, if I had a robo taxi myself, I spend about $80 from here to the airport, right? I would love if my car, my Y, could drop me off and just come back home on its own, right? So I do see that. And then also the Tesla Service Center, if you guys know that, remember that you get an Uber credit for that. So that's a great place that Tesla can use those to drop and pick people up all the time.
Thank you. Meta?
I think it's in Tesla's best interest to outsource the cleaning, the surge planning for events, the uh, you know delivery of food and all that kind of stuff to others, and that can enable companies and restaurants to just have their own delivery driver or whatever they want to do in the future. But that is in line with capitalism and efficiencies that Elon tends to think about. it allows them to just sell the cars and focus on what they're good at instead of trying to manage hundreds of thousands of employees across America alone, if not, millions across the world, to just clean cars and run them. That doesn't seem like their core competency.
Yeah, maybe they can do it at some level, but it'll probably be a minority of the overall fleet.
Yeah, I could
Chris
see like in big cities or something maybe.
Chris Woodward, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think you guys are already going over this. Thanks for bringing me up. I was just really to approach this as like an analyst to see the DCF from all of this. And as you're talking about $30,000, for people who have the car, who have the software, and can provide a little bit of revenue to Tesla. But what I would hope to hear, as an investor myself, someone who's more focused on the auto side, who needs to come to water, like so many of us, hearing the granularity of how you monetize FSD, as Adam Jonas puts it, either through ride share, or through the licensing, which I think is the more lion's share of his $310 price target at $104. Just how further discussion along the lines of what you're getting at, I'll just end there, is what I find most beneficial in this whole conversation, because it does seem, it seems a little bit of damage control going on right now. And it's just how we cross this bridge to being not just auto investors, but, this synthesis that might put more endorsement to 180 and 190 and so forth.
Archive.
I have a question to Omar's point earlier in the space. If this is planning to just be the unveil of the Robotaxi, doesn't that technically unveil the compact car since it's on the same platform?
Well, yes and no. There are going to be similarities given they're built on the same platform. There's going to be a lot of overlap. I think the size will be similar, but the interior and the exterior may be very different from what the Robotaxi looks like. So I do think probably the most significant part of this is that they're talking about putting a next gen platform vehicle into production. They're hitting the right milestones to keep on target to do that. And of course, if they have production capacity for the next gen platform up to produce the Robotaxi, then that means that they can also produce other vehicles on the platform as well. And that bodes well for the compact, the van, other vehicles that they might choose to build on that platform. And I expect those to have a separate unveil.
All right. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Chris, did you get an answer to your question? Chris, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that I'm slowly getting it, but I think it's really the contest going on right now. I think everybody knows it's kind of a Super Bowl between those of us who think the auto valuation has got to keep up a little bit here. But so the answer to the question is anything that monetizes FSD and provides a timeline, regardless of how uncertain the timeline is, whether it's 2 years or 5 years before we see Robotaxi, roaming cities, a plurality of them in the United States, to generate the kind of revenues that would be the game changer for the market cap. I really, it's a hard question to have answered, and I appreciate what you guys are giving this feedback. I should just be listening. You put me down the list if you don't. You can do that, Omar. Thank you, or Yaman. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. X Sports Hawk.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, what you guys think with actual smart summons coming out possibly later this month, Cybertruck possibly getting actual smart summons and FSD soon, what public perception is going to be and how the media is going to handle. I would imagine some of these videos will go viral of Cybertrucks and Teslas. I mean, if I can actually pull up to a grocery store and go inside without having to watch the car go park for me, what you guys think, how that's going to be be handled by public perception. Thanks.
Omar?
I think it's definitely going to be a viral moment. People notice when the car doesn't have a driver. I've seen it when I'm in a Waymo. I've seen it when I've used Smart Summon in the past. So I don't think that you're going to be able to just send the car to go park for you yet. They're starting off with that being supervised. So they launched the auto park feature. You tap on a spot, it goes and parks with you watching. And the Smart Summon feature that are going to ship, this is meant to be used when you're within eyesight of the car. So you're still watching the car. You hold your finger down and you can stop the car at any time just by lifting your finger up. But instead of having to go walk over to your car in the parking lot, you can just push a button and it pulls out of the spot and comes and drives to you. So I think there will be a lot of viral videos of how cool it is. There will probably be some viral videos of it messing up. It'll probably be, hotly debated, I'm sure. But that should be launching this month. We should be getting 12.4 any time now. And I'm expecting that to have Smart Summon in it. If not, then I think 12.5 will have it. But it's, I think, going to be incredibly exciting for people to see their car driving around driverlessly with FSD12 for the first time, even if it is just in parking lots. So by the time we have this Robotaxi unveil, it'll be normal for people to have experienced their Tesla driving around driverlessly and doing some pretty intelligent moves.
Green power.
Hey guys. So talking about the Robotaxi in Waymo, I think Omar. So one thing that I can look, I was looking for information about the remote assistance by human, like human intervention on Robotaxi, and according to latest publication from November 2023, Cruise confirms that Robotaxi rely on human assistance every 4 to 5 miles. What do you think will be the remote intervention strategy from Tesla, and whether or not you think about maybe they're going to connect it to the satellites, the other business from Elon. So that that's one question, because if you have a remote assistant, probably you would have to implement one to offer something like this in a city.
Omar? Omar?
It's really just that you're giving it some hints or something like that. So I can tell you in Waymo, it displays a message when it reaches out for help.
And do we know any kind of information on the frequency of those remote interventions?
Well, I can tell you with Waymo, it almost never requires remote intervention. It displays a message when it happens. So I don't think it's a common thing at all. You can think of it like instead of having one person drive a car, you can have one person for every 1,000 or 10,000 cars. And the car is doing almost everything itself. It's very rare that it needs to act for help. Only when it gets in some very unusual situation that it's unsure about, it could sort of phone out to a call center and ask for help. They could monitor, send some instructions, but it really isn't something that is happening on every drive. Ideally, you just, drive it down and down further, but you're really just moving from someone needing to be in the car to intervene to the system gets so good and handles failure so safely that you can then eventually fall back to interventions being remote and then becoming more and more infrequent until they never happen at all.
Grant?
Yeah, agree with Omar here. I think that there's a perception that having that human in the loop is a huge ding on Cruise and Waymo, and the reality is that that's actually a fairly safe way to deploy AI in the real world. there are a lot of technologies out there that are maybe 99% of the way there. If you want to be able to deploy it, you're going to need at some points a person to actually look at something and investigate what's going on and help resolve the situation. One thing that could be interesting for people to look at, I don't know, I'm familiar with some of the stuff that John Deere is actually doing with human in the loop autonomy. And it's, I think Blue River Technologies is an acquisition they did about 7 years ago. They've had a couple follow-on acquisitions. Just interesting to look at. They've got tractors that are basically self-piloted.
Okay, your sound quality is really bad, so I'm going to cut you off right there. Archive, go ahead.
So I'm seeing a lot of speculation about what vehicle you think is actually going to be produced late next year, as Elon hinted to. Just wanted to get your opinion of, is this the compact car or the Robotaxi going into production late next year?
Omar?
I could see them starting with the Robotaxi first, but moving to the compact very quickly. What they've said in the past is that these would be produced on the same production line. So it's not like you're setting up a production line for Robotaxi and then setting up a line for the compact. You're setting up a production line. The Robotaxi may be what you focus on first, but the battery systems, the motors, the drivetrain, the wiring, the 48 volt, the steer by wire, it's all going to be shared between all of the vehicles they build on this platform. I think modularity and the ability to reuse components to make different vehicle types has been something that's been lacking in the past. People have criticized how long it takes them to, make new vehicle variants. So I think this new production system has the potential to change that, but of course it's very untested. Nobody's ever done anything like this before. So there's some more risks there just in terms of validating the production system. One of the biggest bullish things that could happen is if we're actually seeing the next gen platform working in the real world, output coming out of it, regardless of what the vehicle type is. And if it really does work and it really does drive down costs in the way they expect, I would expect, several different vehicles built on the platform, maybe even different changes for the ones built in Berlin versus the Mexico line versus the Austin line.
Yeah, I think that's the main point. Just like long range and short range vehicles are made on the same line or vehicles with different seats, the difference is maybe small enough that whether it's the Robotaxi or the cheaper model, the unbox process allows you to do it on the same line.
Wojciech.
Hi, I have one question from different perspective. If I understand correctly, Robotaxi is like AI taxi, fully AI taxi, yes, without steering wheel. I cannot imagine that it will happen so fast because to get approval from the government that the car will be driving itself fully itself, it's it's like, I think it's a very very long time to do this, and also about in case of some.
Can you ask your question?
Yes, let me and also the case of the in case of some you know how to say it in English, when you crash the car, yes, and it's like, whoa, it's from this perspective. Yes, ask please. Sorry.
You actually had a question in the replies that's why I brought you up. And the question was, let me see if I can find it. How exactly will this Robotaxi be implemented? You have Tesla Autopilot right now. You can use it like Uber or taxi already. Do you really think that Robotaxi will get approval for full AI driver on the road in the government? I guess maybe to rephrase that question, Omar, do you think regulatory approval process will be a limiting factor for the service?
I don't. I mean, we have driverless Waymos on the road today, right? So there is, I think, the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards require a steering wheel and pedals. So you'd have to receive an exemption or see the safety standards be updated in order to put a vehicle like this on the road. But you could always put some, manual control somewhere for compliance or something, maybe as a stopgap, or produce the compact crossover with controls on the same line or something. Um, uh, I don't see it really being a showstopper in 2026. If they're letting vehicles on the road without drivers today that are not using these controls at all, then why does it matter? It actually is kind of a safety risk to have these controls. Like if you sit on the front seat of a Waymo, which is allowed, it says, "Please do not touch the wheel." It's actually going to move the car, and the car may do hard braking. So it's actually kind of a safety liability that if someone pulls the wheel or touches the wheel, they could crash the car. So there are benefits to really just eliminating it, and then you get an extra seat too.
Grant, and then machine.
Yeah, it's just a strong disagree for me. FSD as it exists today is illegal in Europe functionally. I mean, I think we discovered that in the last couple days. Where it exists, or where Waymo exists today in places like California, that is the output of a pretty extensive approvals process that takes time. I think years. I think it was 18 months, 24 months for Waymos to go through the permitting process with California. So I think it's kind of insane to claim that regulatory considerations are not going to be important here.
Meta.
While I agree that there's regulatory considerations, it could be based on miles versus time. And Tesla has way more vehicles already available. So I don't think it will take as much time as it took for Waymo because they were both developing the software and seeking approval.
I mean, even if it takes 24 months, um, this thing is like 24 months away from production, so they have time.
Grant.
Yeah, I think I hear you on the data, but this is a new vehicle with a totally new framework for how it's going to be utilized. So I don't think the existing data is actually relevant. I don't think any regulator is going to look at how many miles a 2020 Model Y is driven and say, oh, yeah, like a Robotaxi is good.
Waymo's Waymo
I
has
don't think anyone's denying that this is uncharted territory. It's not legal to sell a vehicle without a steering wheel and pedals today. So there's no denying what Grant's saying. Obviously, there are some challenges there. Some people would say that's really the primary challenge to bringing a vehicle like this to market. But I think they're saying, look, this is what the future is. We're going to design this. There's no real risk because the production line is shared. Even if they go through all the work of setting it up and they just can't sell this thing, there are configurations of the vehicle with controls they can start producing without any changes to the law.
The other thing to keep in mind is that Waymo has released, I think, 4 or 5 different variations, and they didn't have to requalify for the subsequent variations.
Wojciech.
I still disagree. I think that if you allow really fully self-driving AI,
New speakers are limited to asking questions.
okay,
Omar.
In the comments of this space, I went ahead and commented with a video from Cruise from about 11 months ago, where they're showing off testing of their driverless Cruise Origin Robotaxi. So they were able to do that. Zoox was able to do that. They are making these vehicles. They applied for an exemption. It doesn't look like they're going to get it as it is. But this isn't something that's completely out of left field. This is something that General Motors has already done, that Zoox has already done. They're not even the first to unveil a concept for this type of thing. Now, actually, bringing it to market and allowing it for sale is a different story. But I feel that it's timely for them to be preparing to produce a vehicle like this. By the time it gets into production, we're going to be needing it.
Wannabe features.
Hey, yeah, man. I posted this in the on the chat for reference. But my question is, do you think FTC could try and put restrictions on allowing Tesla to have a proprietary ride share platform, which is basically like a marketplace? Um, when Apple App Store was coming out, I think regulatory agencies were not. They kind of were caught flat-footed, and they didn't know the power of network effects. But now they could probably try and put some restrictions on letting Tesla have a proprietary app. Any thoughts?
There's a regulation coming from Europe called the Digital Marketing or Marketplace Act that does not apply to physical marketplaces. And even if it did apply, as long as Tesla is not both a marketplace and a competitor in the marketplace, they would be okay. The problem with Apple is that they have their own apps in the App Store and they host the App Store.
But Tesla could have their own cars on the their Uber-like app, right?
Right. At that point, it would apply.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, man.
Also, that's a European law, so I'm not sure if it would apply in the States.
Yeah, I just wanted to get like a sentiment on like things are changing, right? Like regulatory temperatures are changing. People's sentiments are changing. So that's something that I was hoping to kind of get you guys' thoughts on. Appreciate it.
I mean, it's a little bit difficult to predict the far future when this thing is mainstream. But right now, it's really part of a pretty diverse rides market. So I don't think you can claim there's a monopoly. Waymo is allowed to, for example, run their own rideshare service that only has Waymo cars. And there's no problem with that. So I think at least initially, due to the novel nature of the technology and the need for a tight integration between the ride sharing service and the self driving stack, they should be allowed to do it. Now, whether, for example, European regulators pressure them to open up 5-10 years down the line, that could happen. But I think at least initially, they will be able to probably have their own network and keep it exclusive, that only the Tesla network is an option. These vehicles can't join Uber or Lyft or another network just due to the need for that tight integration.
Right.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the more negative people here, and I really don't see, antitrust provisions being leveraged to prevent them from doing all that. I think it's fine.
Code surveyed.
Hey, wanted to see if there was any thoughts on whether or not there would be some wireless charging announcements coming up alongside this release. Seems like that would be a big convenience factor for the car to be able to charge itself without having to have a physical connection.
Yeah, that's a great point. If it's a Robotaxi without a driver, then how does it charge itself? Does one of the passengers have to plug it in? Does Optimus plug it in? Probably wireless charging could be the big answer. We have seen hookups for a wireless charging pad on the Cybertruck. So they've started building the hardware in on the Cybertruck to attach a wireless charging pad. And I would definitely expect the Robotaxi to have wireless charging hardware built in too.
ACDC. Actually, we have two more speakers. Hold on one second. Elira.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
How do you say
That's
that?
Eliran, and NGR is my surname, so it's Nagar.
All right.
But
All right.
matched it. My question is short, so I'll keep it short. Looks like everyone agrees that the technology is not the blockage for a real FSD or level 4, level 5, etc. But the thing is, if we look at markets, the North American as well as Europe are regulatory blocked. So do you think that Tesla would go to the China and try to maneuver its way with FSD from there and after the iron wall will fall, then others will follow? Thanks.
If you build it, they will come. Make the technology work, build the vehicle, find some country in the world that wants it. If fucking Timbuktu wants to be the first place to do robotaxis, Timbuktu can be the first. So find somewhere easy, launch it there. If some places don't want to let us do it, that's up to them. They get to decide. But make the data speak for itself. And I think the regulations will fall in place if you make the product actually work.
Machine.
I'm not sure that there's that many regulatory hurdles in the US overall. Waymo's already doing it, and that should even open up the path for it to be easier for Tesla. And I think you can find states that'll quickly accept the technology. So I don't expect that to be much of an issue. But otherwise, I agree with Omar. And I just came up to say, with respect to the unboxed method, Yaman, I gave your mom a box last night, a present.
You changed it up this time.
Nobody wants to be behind the times. Nobody wants to have a country or a municipality that's economically uncompetitive because the cost and availability of transportation is lower and higher cost. So people will start to make fun of these cities. Oh my God, they still don't allow driverless cars. And I think the rules will change. I could be wrong. Maybe it ends up being a really difficult thing and only a few places have it. But I think if it works, if it really works and it's really safe, I think people are having a hard time imagining a system that's actually better than humans in every way and how people would react to that if they saw it.
Yeah, obviously I'm kind of a more cynical person on these topics. I think that one other thing I would just flag is that I think
Every single time, like literally every time you start, you're like, I am the more conservative one. I am the more cynical one. I am the bear case. I am this and that. We get it.
Okay.
Maybe you can do it like once a day. How about that?
Okay. Fair. Done. Was trying to be deferential, but I hear you. I think that Elon's extremely antagonistic stances and behavior towards regulators, senators, regulatory agencies, all of those sorts of things could come back to bite him and Tesla in this exact scenario. I mean, I hear, Machine, that there isn't potentially a robust regulatory framework for dealing with this type of new technology. That's often the case, but I do expect that a lot of people will be interested in making sure that things are safe. And I think there will be a little bit of a public push to make sure that these things are being properly regulated. I mean, if I saw a driverless car going around a parking lot when I'm going to the grocery store with a 2-year-old, I'm going to probably get upset or try to understand what's going on. And I'm not even like a tech Luddite type person.
Grant, though, wouldn't you also think that if they spend an additional amount of time investigating the safety and it turns out that it's actually safer than humans, then that's like a really, really strong case for the regulation to get pushed through quickly? I have a feeling that in the next year or so, it's going to be indisputable. And yeah, sure, you may lift an eyebrow when you see one driverless for the first time in a parking lot. But when you see a video of a driverless robotaxi avoiding an accident that no human would have, or something along those lines, I think it could change a lot of people's tune very quickly and actually add a lot of pressure to regulators. Like, get this in my city because it is good for safety.
Elon says 8-8 and Year of the Dragon. 8-8 and the Year of the Dragon in a reply to Sawyer.
Knew it.
You knew what?
This is targeted
Chinese
at China.
culture.
You think they're going to do this in China first?
They could. Why not?
I mean, I guess they can unveil it in China first. I don't know if their
I
service
don't think
is
they're
gonna
going to
start in
unveil
China.
it in China. It's going to be
Right.
unveiled in the US.
Yeah, I think so. Machine.
But I think they want the Chinese government's approval for sure.
As the lone Ivy League educated person in space, I'm gonna start with that intro every time, Grant.
I think everybody should have an intro in honor of Grant.
I'm just gonna say what people should rely on is not videos of success or videos of failure. It's going to be cold, hard data. Tesla will need to provide open source data on how awesome their software is, if it is indeed better than humans. And
You
that
know,
should be the
Grant,
driving factor.
Machine is making you look like a bull. So would you like to remind us what kind of person you are?
Well, I forget, what did he, Charity Trade, say I am?
Oh, let's hear it.
Is he here still? Or did he have to go to bed? Isn't it his bedtime now?
I don't know. Grant, what did you do to the Empire State Building?
I don't know, stock photo.
Anyway, what were you going to say?
I feel like I've lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. I mean, I hear what you guys are saying, and I think it makes sense that theoretically, if the tech was perfect and a completely, undeniable level of safety was being provided by this technology, I would certainly hope that regulators would be open to it. I think I've just seen this thing play out different ways. I have less faith in the regulatory process producing optimal outcomes, and I think it's a little bushy-tailed of you to think that it's that easy and simple, because honestly it's not. I live in New York. If I go over to New Jersey, there is a human being that is legally required to pump gas, like, which is insane, but that's the law, and it doesn't make sense, and that's just how things work, because laws often don't make sense. Laws are definitely not created based on the scientific data supporting an optimal outcome. They're just not. There's complications that are always a part of the equation, and there are going to be a lot of people in those metros who you're saying are going to be clamoring to make Tesla robotaxis illegal, who don't like Elon. There are going to be competitors who understand the value of the robotaxi market, who have no interest in feeding it to someone else, so they'll be lobbying. It's a complicated thing, is all I'm saying.
All right. All right, let's go through the hands over. We also have a bunch of people requesting to speak. Charles.
Hey guys, interesting conversation. Do you have any opinion?
What's your question?
I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the miles per required per disengagement.
Machine.
Oh, are you guys not able to hear me? Sorry.
What do we think it needs to be?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just interested in your thoughts on what it needs to be before Tesla.
At least 1 million.
What?
There you go. Thank you. Oh my goodness, Machine. Are you serious? All right, Eleron.
Yeah, it's a bit of a follow-up for what Grant said. It looks like, if I may, it looks like that China previously, unlike anyone believed, gave Tesla a real, like a red carpet to do some things that even Apple didn't do in its market. To lead the EV industry in China over. And it seems like when China believes that if Tesla will lead the FSD market, then it wants a bit of its share to seem the one that raised the flag first of anyone. That's why I thought that China would be the place that Tesla will look for to go for first on the FSD.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I agree with Omar that US is probably the first place. I mean, it's where FSD has been trained, and although it's not going to require an insurmountable amount of retraining, it's going to require some retraining to roll out FSD and Robotaxi in other countries. So I just don't see how China can be the first place where Tesla starts Robotaxi services first. Jimmy.
I just wanted to say, in order to understand robo-taxis, we need to go back 2 billion years and understand that the world started at a global cooling stage and that we have worked our way all the way up from different technology. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. That's just what I hear sometimes when people are speaking. I get yamming. I get why you get upset, man. I understand. I will drop down to listener now.
Machine.
I knew it. I could tell if he was being sarcastic from the beginning. And that requires a large amount of common sense, which most of the speakers here do not have. And that's why you have me up here. I'm the master of common
Wayfarer.
sense. I'm not done. I'm not done. Wait. Everyone's discussing all this stuff as if something's definitely going to happen at a certain time. Okay. The key question is, when will they get to Robotaxi? And you do not know when. No, Penny, you don't know if it's going to be in 1 year exactly. Okay. It's uncertain. We have to assign probabilities to event and then value the company based on those probabilities times the expected value, discounted backward, present day.
You sound panicked. Why are you panicked?
My
Are you
voice
watching
is
this
sore.
stock? Are you watching the stock price go up after hours, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't
No.
buy my calls yet"?
I made a lot of money. I'm tired because my tongue's been working hard with your mom.
That was really good. I almost spit out my water. Venture trading. Venture trader. You have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
guys. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to hear your opinion in regards of a supervised taxi network. I thought about it, and I think maybe they will launch the network on this day, but just in a supervised manner. What do you think about it?
No, there's no way that they're launching the network on that day. And I think a supervised robotaxi network is boring, personally. Like, what's the advantage if there's a nag and I have to keep looking? I think there's like next to 0% chance that that's true.
The advantage is that you have to start with it. It's not easy to get this thing going. Just look how long it took Uber to come at the scale, and it's just the beginning. They can make it fully autonomous 1 or 2 years later, but I think they have to start with it.
Well, there's a lot of overhead that's added in running a supervised service. You have to do background checks on the riders, and you have to worry about minimum hours and all this kind of stuff. So they are already using Uber quite a bit.
Machine.
It seems like it would be ineffective to have it be supervised at first from a cost standpoint. So ideally, they would avoid it. However, like most new products, it's very hard to bring something to market without problems, and it's hard to say what Tesla is going to miss if they just immediately try to quote turn on a robotaxi network, starting from scratch, without there being some unseen problems. So I would think maybe they would demo maybe in a small geographic area, a la San Francisco, where maybe they kind of do a slow introduction, or maybe it's supervised at first, just for them to kind of work out the kinks, not because they need to do it at scale. That's just a minimum viable product sort of thing, or maybe they do it with the tunnels in Las Vegas, where it could be autonomous.
Oh wow, you stopped speaking before I cut you off. Amazing. That never happens. Is it because it's Friday?
I'm learning. Finally.
There is an insane amount of replies to the space, and there's no way I can keep up. I'm actually missing like some of the major ones too. So if you have a question and you don't get the chance to ask to any of the speakers, you can reply to the space and tag them. Like Omar has been replying to people as he sees questions. Thank you, Omar. And that's probably a more scalable way. Penny.
Yeah, we were commenting on the fact that supervised, maybe a way to get their toes in the water, but we're doing supervised now. I don't understand why we need to do that for the Robotaxi network unveil. We're preparing for that with supervised FSD. That's how we're getting through the edge cases and making sure that it's ready. We'll know when it's ready to turn on Robotaxi because they'll be treating FSD like it's Robotaxi.
Yeah, machine.
Well, I don't know. What do you need for a robotaxi network? Do you need to have ample charging stations in an urban environment to charge the cars, which are going to be used a lot? Do you need to have automated charging of those cars? Do you need to set up the payment system? I'm not saying these things are hard to overcome. I just think you need to plan for them. And yeah, you could probably plan for them if you do it right and execute correctly without having some, minimum viable product first. But I just think, it's something a more conservative approach would be to at least try it out somewhere. But it's arguably not needed if you do it right.
Silver stripe. I'm trying to roll my R's a little bit. Mr. Silver? No. Charles.
Yeah, I ran a rideshare network for a while, and it's pretty basic to get set up, so I'm not too worried about that. But what I'm thinking about is we probably see a lot of Teslas driving around without anyone in the driver's seat a long time before they start operating a rideshare network. Has anyone seen that? Is that something that they're like? I mean, whole Mars, you're driving around all the time with FSD 12.3, and I've been using it. But is Tesla doing any testing anywhere without drivers in the passengers or in the driver's seat?
Machine.
No, they're not.
How can you know?
Because they'd have to report it to the DMV in California, at least.
Yeah, exactly. If it's in California.
But I don't know if his question
Do it
was
in Arizona then.
I don't know if his question was just testing autonomous vehicles. At first, I thought he was just asking if people had to get used to seeing cars without drivers in it. And if that was a real concern, I would just suggest people going to Australia. And when you're there, or I guess you go to England, but it's colder. You'll look at the driver's seat and not see anyone, and you'll get frightened. And so you could feel like what these people would feel like, and then you get used to it after a few weeks.
Yeah, that wasn't my question. That's funny, but I mean, I've been to Arizona and taken a Waymo and stuff like that, so I think people are used to it already. I was just wondering if anyone has seen or heard of Tesla doing that, and what do you think of the prospect that they're likely going to have to do that or have cars going like Tesla's going around driverless? Like, is that a good maybe an indicator that they're going to be ready to launch, or what are your thoughts on that?
Why is it different, Charles, if there's no one in the driver's seat versus if there is someone in the driver's seat, but they're not operating and they only need to take over in certain situations? I think that you can learn everything that you need to learn. And when you get to the point that there's no interventions, if there is someone sitting in the driver's seat and they're simply not ever needing to do any work, that you can feel comfortable that there wouldn't need to be any work done if there was no one in that seat, right? So I just don't see the difference other than from a perception. Like from a public perception point of view, it makes sense. But from a training of the system, it just doesn't seem like it makes any difference whatsoever if there's someone sitting in the driver's seat doing nothing versus there's no one there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Withdrawn.
Right, and they are, obviously doing some driverless testing of Smart Summon, for example. That's a feature, tens of thousands of employees have access to now that they're about to release to customers. So they're doing, obviously some driverless testing for things like that, but I agree. If there's no interventions, it doesn't matter if someone's sitting in the driver's seat or the passenger seat or the back seat.
Machine, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I do think, there's no reason for Tesla to do it for themselves. Supervised is the best of both worlds. They're literally, people are paying to supervise and label for them, which is what every other company would love to have but can't. There is a public perception part that I think does matter, even if it's just from confidence of valuation standpoint at some point, which they do want to see people without people in the cars. They don't trust people like Omar, who's able to subtly drive the wheel with his crotch or whatever when they can't see. I mean, this is how people break down these videos. They study Omar's crotch to see if he's moving the steering wheel with the inside of his thighs. And I would prefer not having to look at Omar's thighs. I would prefer just to not see someone in the car. So in a year or two from now, I would love them to demo this, to show with confidence, look at how great we are. Whereas Waymo's, doing a great job with the limited localities it's in. But if Waymo was so confident about how great their software is, they would put this in 50 different cities. I don't care if it's one car in each city. Put it in 50 different cities to show, look at how great our software is. It works everywhere already, but they don't, right? So for both entities, they're not showing the confidence yet that I think means they're not there yet. But Tesla obviously
Okay.
is on a fast path.
We have a couple of new speakers. Let's go to them first, and then I'll get back to the hands. Wayfarer, go ahead. Wayfarer.
Hello. Hi, guys. I have a question, actually. So my question is regarding this Robotaxi announcement that Elon posted. So I believe the most important aspect of the Robotaxi is an advanced or a fully functioning FSD. And we know where it is. It is very impressive. I've been following it. Watched hundreds of hours of videos actually because I'm really waiting for that to happen. But it's not 100% obviously. And in 4 months, what can possibly happen if we're talking about the August 2024? So what is happening around this? Is it really the FSD? There's an FSD that is we're not aware of that is much more progressed than what we have.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
Yoda.
Yeah, so August 8th is just the unveiling event. It doesn't mean that the Robotaxi will be functioning on that date, to answer that person's question. And then for Omar, yeah, I thought a few days ago, people were saying there's no AI in Tesla. So what is this Robotaxi product?
Has anyone seen Gordon today?
He's not even here to hear that.
You don't know that. He might be anonymously listening. About half
He's
the
in a
people listen
crisis meeting right now with Jim Chanos and Tesla charts. They're saying, how do we fucking spin this one? Should we go with the
What?
stock pump?
What happened to Tesla Charles? Is he still around?
He's happy. He's out living his life somewhere.
Gosh.
Hey guys, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask the group whether they think, like, how they think this Robotaxi announcement's going to impact the ability to put your own vehicle that has FSD on a network. Because I mean, if Tesla's making a purpose-built Robotaxi, I imagine it's going to be a lot more optimized than our old and busted cars with steering wheels and pedals that are on the same network where you have to sit in the back seat. Just wondering how you guys think like the monetization for us existing owners is going to like play out if there's a Robotaxi future with FSD solved.
I think there's a lot of speculation involved in answering that question. First of all, like we don't know what the hardware looks like on this new vehicle, but remember, they're not debuting the network on that day. No one's going to be making money. I like have a high level of confidence, especially after listening to other people on the call, that they're unveiling a vehicle on that day, right? So they're going to show us what it looks like. That will be in production a year later. That means that the network will be enabled at least for those vehicles a year later. Our cars, all signs point to eventually, hopefully, we'll get there. I haven't seen any indication that we won't, but that's not what this event is about anyway.
So you think the network will be turned on, so to speak, in advance or around this time of a debut? I know they're not the same thing, but like they're obviously there needs to be a
No
sequence of
way.
events.
No way. This is a vehicle unveil. They're showing off a vehicle they've designed as a purpose-built robotaxi. This does not mean that they don't want other vehicles to be robotaxis. They're going to make as many vehicles robotaxis as they possibly can. And I believe all hardware 3 and hardware 4 vehicles will have the functionality needed. So the dedicated robotaxi vehicle they're going to unveil is going to be smaller than the Model 3 and Y. So for a typical ride where you just have one or two people or maybe some lunch that needs to be delivered or something, that's going to be your bread and butter. You're just cheap, lowest cost per mile transportation. But sometimes you got your family with you. Maybe you want to call a Model Y. Maybe you want to call a Model 3, a Model X. Maybe you've got a bunch of stuff with you and you want to call a Cybertruck. Maybe you have a ton of goods with you and you want to call an even bigger vehicle. So I think it's not necessarily about this is the only robotaxi, but this is really the dedicated robotaxi. This is built on the next gen platform that's designed to drive the cost per mile to the lowest amount possible. So it's the base offering and really, the sort of heart of the service. But it doesn't mean that other vehicles are not going to be able to join the network as well.
But on that regulatory point, like if you have
Machine.
My personally, as I've said before, think it's less likely that current vehicles, especially hardware 3, will be on this robotaxi network. I think the next gen vehicle at high volume production will be more than sufficient to supply the ramp up for robotaxis, as there will be a ramp up. But so I wouldn't get your hopes up. But maybe they'll allow it in some occasions. But as to the point about making money on this, I'm going to make money on the stock that's going to pump up into this robotaxi event, because let's just imagine FSD progress likely will continue at a high clip over the next 5 months. Coming into this event, everyone's going to be super optimistic, and he's going to unveil it, and everyone's thinking, oh my God, we're at like 5,000 miles per disengagement. Here's the robotaxi. Everyone's modeling out $4 trillion in market cap, and the stock's going to go up to $300. And I've bought call. I'll buy calls soon. Then I'll sell, and then I'll buy puts because it'll be overhyped.
Is that financial advice?
Yes.
All right. Well, everybody knows where Machine lives. If you don't, just DM me. I'll send you the address. Bogdan.
Yes, hey Yaman. I'm thinking the size of the mattress I'm gonna put up to my FSD robotaxi car, so I can have sex and I can have a nap later. What do you think?
Great idea. All right, Charles.
Yeah, well, like one use case that is going to be pretty cool is working in your vehicle and being productive while you travel. It's something that you can kind of do with FSD now if you break the law, but like once you can actually do that, like I think that's going to be a game changer for just on an economic front. But Machine, to your point of kind of buy the rumor, sell the news, I think that's pretty slick play, because I mean Tesla drops almost every time they make an announcement, no matter, because there's so much hype. No matter how great their stuff is, there's always a drop when they actually make an announcement. So yeah, that's probably a good idea. Not
Josh,
financial
did you have a
advice.
follow-up question on your, you were saying regulatory legal?
Yeah, on the regulatory front, like, is it going to be approved for our vehicles to be full self-driving legally without anyone in the front seat before a robotaxi? Like Tesla's going to have to prioritize focusing on one or the other or both, but they're going to be fundamentally different asks, I would imagine.
By the end of this year, FSD is going to nail it on every drive. That's what I see happening. So yes, I think the software they're going to ship to us is going to progress to that level in advance of this thing shipping. But of course, nobody really knows.
Speaking of nailing things, never mind.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say that one person who said they wanted to have sex in the Robotaxi, I just thought, oh my God, what a great idea. I can have sex with Machine's mom and not watch the road.
Yes, thank you.
There's great. I mean, someone can create a whole Pornhub account just on sex and Tesla robotaxis.
There's already a few videos out there.
Oh, really? Have you seen them?
Yeah. I haven't.
Elon
Well,
tweeted them. You
I may
remember,
be
like
done.
5-6 years ago, didn't he like tweet an image or something? It's kind of like his
I
beginning
mean,
or something.
I've done extensive research on the autopilot topic from many different facets. So I may have encountered some information, but you can see it on, the internet. People fucking each other on
Machine.
autopilot.
I was looking at my analytics over the weekend, and 99% of our listeners are male. I wonder why.
It's clearly because of Omar's thighs.
Mr. Sex is coming back up. Bogdan, go ahead.
Well, maybe Tesla gonna do some presentation of doing sex on the back of the car. That would be awesome.
It sounds like we're kind of running out of things to talk about after 3.5 hours today. Any other questions, comments? Let's see. Let's look at these replies a little bit.
Elon will demonstrate getting a hand job from a Tesla bot while the Robotaxi drives around.
There goes the ad revenue.
I wonder why this space is 99% male. I don't know why that could be.
Okay. All right.
Fun topic. Thanks for hosting, Gavin.
Aileron says, this space was great. Now it looks like a free fall machine.
By the way, do you notice whenever there is like a female in the audience, I go click on their profile and they're clearly porn stars or OnlyFans. What are they doing on this space? Are they Tesla investors too?
Oh yeah, a lot of them drive Teslas. These OnlyFans stars, prostitutes, porn stars.
All right. Okay. All right. Back to Tesla. Michelle.
Well, you guys were talking about Tesla car without a driver, but as the resident cyclist, if there's a Robo Tesla doing something and there's no driver, who should I complain to? Can I just call the space instead?
Complain to Elon. He'll fix it. This thing will be so considerate. You've never seen a driver be as nice to you as this thing.
The English says, as a new user of FSD, my observation is that it drives well, but as if it has never seen the route before. I feel like the AI should leverage previous trips and maps more at some point. Also, they should make the maps improve using the AI. What do you say to that, Machine?
Wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
Curious Spaceman says, seriously, this space was huge for spreading misinformation, at least from what I saw last year. Yama shuts down any negative talk. It's not true. Omar can hype FSD and everyone's amazed, but no one questions why others can't do the same. That's not true. We just had a whole space
Everybody's
about bulls and
experiencing
bears.
the same. Yeah.
Well, you've learned over time. It's taken you over a year to listen to the calmness and rational ability of me to get you out of this hole of like super bullishness, such as both of you rejecting the FSD beta tracker a year ago, and now it's your favorite little child. So yeah, I agree with the speaker than last year. There's a lot of bad advice, but I think it's improving.
Man, even the replies are low quality right now. What is going on? Let's
Do you know what
turn the
happened?
ship around.
It happened
Quick
because
comment.
All right, I'm taking action, executive action. W.
Hey guys, I only want to say from a Europe perspective, it's so disappointing when you see all the good videos in the US or North America, and in Europe just the regulation is just so bad. But yeah, man, I won our coffee bet with no FSD in Q1 in Europe. But it would better when we have some FSD maybe at one time. I don't know if it's coming.
Let's see. So you and I had a coffee bet. Hold on one sec. Everybody stay on mute while I look this up. There's a coffee bet challenge going on here. Everybody stay on mute, please. Thank you.
I feel your pain, man. I'm in Italy right now, and
First Robotaxi ride by September 2024. Oh, no, that's not you and me. That's somebody else. Let's say W. FSD available in Europe by March. Yeah, you did win that bet. You did win that bet. Well, how do you want your coffee?
Do we want it?
I can
remote?
Venmo you. I can PayPal Venmo if you visit Austin for one of these events. We can do it in person. Where are you?
I'm in Germany, but maybe I want to come to the US.
Well,
would be cool.
Yeah, when you come to the US, I'll buy you coffee. And if you change your mind, just text me. I can PayPal if you have PayPal or Venmo. All right, Red Fox.
Hey, yeah, man. I mean, I just want to add to the conversation, all seriousness. I mean, it's inevitable that FSD is going to happen. It's going to work. Whether there's going to be another unveiling in the next 4 months when the due date comes, it's too good. And every time the new generation software comes out, it's leaps and bounds from the previous one. I mean, the stock is hilariously cheap right now, and we're all going to be talking about this in 2-3 years or whatever, when the stock is trading at like 3 times as much. I mean, yeah, that's just my opinion. It's eventually going to happen, and people can joke about it all they want, but it's just going to be common everywhere in a decade from now.
Okay, thank you. All right. Michelle, did you have another question or comment?
Well, Omar was right that like it's kind of reassuring. The opposite happened where a Tesla was coming up, and I was unsure if it's like it would emergency brake for. I was actually just walking, but I was then immediately reassured, like, oh, I know it's a Tesla. It's probably beeping at the driver right now, and nothing happened. And that also was very reassuring. So it's a double-edged sword. The fear that a Tesla would be empty, but then you're reassured that if the software is really reliable, you're gonna be safe. The car's not gonna do anything crazy.
Michelle, when do you have your piano spaces? When can I listen to some piano again?
They're always recorded, and they're extremely random. It's really when I have time.
All right. So if you want to listen to Michelle play the piano, you can follow him. He does a great job. All right, let's see. Omar, there's a question for you. Why isn't the national rollout of Robotaxis already happening with Semi and Pepsi gathering data and astutely bypassing local regulations by relying on ICC, while the Pepsi driver catches Z's on U.S. interstates. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not sure what this person's talking about. The reason why we don't have robo-taxis is because the software would just crash too much if we let it operate driverlessly today. So they need to really get the intervention rate down to something like 1 every 1,000,000 miles, right? Because you think about a robo-taxi, 12,000 miles a year. Let's say you drive 10 times more a year as a robo-taxi. So that's like 120,000 miles a year. So I feel like you probably need to get it to like once every 10 years for a crash or something like that. Because otherwise, these things are just going to be crashing all the time because they're on the road so much. So it's quite a tall bar.
Adam Henley has a good question. Will Starlink be standard hardware on the Robotaxi?
All current Tesla cars can already connect to Starlink via the cell service, which is a fallback. So I think cell will be the primary means of communication. Starlink requires a line of sight to the sky, which isn't always the case in the urban areas that are the primary robotaxi markets. You go under a bridge, you are in an underground parking garage, whatever. So many scenarios where Starlink's not going to work. So cell is going to have to be the primary thing. If you go out to the middle of nowhere where Starlink is really needed, where like the robotaxi's kind of out of coverage area, the Starlink satellite to cell service, where the satellite gives GSM service and the car's GSM antenna can connect, should work with Tesla cars as a failback. And it's possible they could have more Starlink hardware in the cars in the future, but really cell is going to be the primary connection medium.
Thank you. Josh. Josh?
Yeah, I was wondering what everyone thinks as to whether or not there might be kind of like a intermediate phase once the robo taxis are launched, in which if a car has an issue, there might be some kind of over the air intervention, someone from Tesla that would be able to intervene, kind of like Waymo style, or if you think that Tesla is kind of beyond this and is never going to need to resort to a strategy like this one.
Omar?
I believe there will be remote monitoring and intervention. So if a car is operating driverlessly, it'll be able to send up a flag, get somebody to potentially look at what it's seeing. There will be situations where it may pause if it's uncertain about how to proceed. Let's say a really weird situation happens, a crash, something like that in front of it, and it's unsure about how to proceed. It may ask a human to confirm. And there will be certain commands that an operator should be able to send. For example, pull over, stop immediately, reverse, things like that. Similar to what Waymo and Cruise have operated. Like we discussed, a lot of people make fun of this, but there's just no way to send a car out driverlessly and not be able to monitor what's happening with it and give it instructions if need be. And of course, law enforcement will probably also need to do this as well. If it's in a crash or if somebody else is in a crash and it's kind of in the scene nearby or something like that, there are going to be examples where law enforcement also wants to get in touch with them and get them to do something with the car. So that's going to probably be required, I think.
Grant, are you still short? Grant?
Hey, yes, I am.
How do you feel about this after hours action?
Not worried about it. Honestly, I might add. I did cut half the short a while ago, when the stock was starting to spike on FSD12, but I might add to it after this spike because 2024 is going to be a rough year and none of this is going to happen this year.
Omar?
Another thing I think you'll be able to do is actually monitor the cars yourself. So you already see today the ability to view all the Tesla cameras remotely when you're in Sentry mode. I think while the car is driving driverlessly, you'll be able to see the FSD visualization in the app. You'll be able to see where the car is, what it's doing. You'll be able to tap into its cameras remotely, and you'll be able to send it instructions just like Tesla's operators will be able to do.
Omar, question for you from YouTube live chat by Steve. What are the chances that the Robotaxi network actually launches on August 8th?
Probably pretty close to zero. I mean, yeah. It doesn't really seem legal to launch it right now, at least in the form Tesla imagines it. So there'd be quite a bit of warning in terms of permitting and stuff like that before they, for example, launched a trial driverless service in Arizona or something like that. So this is, to be clear, an unveil of a new vehicle smaller than the 3Y, built on the next generation platform that's designed to be a driverless robotaxi without steering wheel or pedals.
Any?
Yeah, sorry, I'm in a parking lot here with my daughter and the car's driving by. I think that there's close to 0% chance that they're doing the network. The closest thing that we might get to that is that they think FSD is ready and that we get an announcement that they're filing for applications in places like Omar was talking about. I think there's some chance of that, but almost zero that they're enabling the network.
ACDC.
Yeah, man. So I think just like they're not going to, I mean, they're going to release the concept of the new vehicle, right? It's the same way they can release the concept of the network. It's not going to be a live network, but they have to come in and somewhat give it a vision along, with the vehicle because both of the things are tied in together. Okay. And just one more note from a financial advisor standpoint. I mean, the way I look at Elon's news is it's hugely positive. Okay. But Elon doesn't think in terms of stock price terms. He's thinking in terms of the company's long term vision. Okay. And the stock is going to do what near term earnings and ratings and everything else, cash flow and revenue and profitability, margins, everything, all of those things do. Okay. So the way I'm going to look at it this is I'm going to look at the unveil, look at where it is, look at how many years out it adds to the bottom line. Okay. And I think that's what everybody has to do because you just can't assign a premium, which could be 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out, or 10 years out to a stock, especially in this environment where the market is not ready to give Tesla the same premium. Can you imagine any headlines going on 8-8 saying, Tesla has solved Robotaxi? I mean, he just doesn't get that PR anymore, right? So that
Yeah,
premium,
I
I
don't know.
think, is
I mean, you're kind of making all absolute statements, which I don't think are warranted here. There's a chance of everything. I feel like, maybe there's a chance. Like some of these things can actually happen. Like you said, there's no way it's going to happen. Grant?
Yeah, I tend to think that Elon does pay attention to the stock price. I think that that's exactly where this announcement is coming from. I think that he is looking to get people's focus off of the near-term earnings results and onto a fanciful promise that's like years and years away. That's just my personal take.
Why though? Like, why do you think Elon would work? I mean, it's not like Tesla needs to raise capital, right? Why would he worry about the stock price as much as you think he does?
I mean, if nothing else, just employee retention. I mean, there are plenty of reasons to worry about your company's stock price if you're the CEO of a large public business.
So what are they?
I don't even know how to explain that.
What are those reasons?
Like your shareholders are wanting a good return. Your public perception is affected by the performance of the stock price. Retaining talent, especially in an AI heavy, arms race for talent is, heavily predicated on the performance of the stock price and the perceived value of the option grants. I mean, there's any number of reasons. I think it's kind of a crazy question, to be honest. Like, CEOs of public companies care about their stock price. They're paid to.
Well, I mean, he doesn't act like most CEOs. You know that, right? He's not just any other CEO. I don't think he cares about the short-term stock price as much as you think he does.
Agree to
Omar?
disagree.
I mean, obviously, he cares to some extent, but I think he believes that management should manage for what is in the best long-term interest of the company rather than just cowering to the whims of the crowd, right? That's kind of his view on it. And he's taken a very bold strategy, for example, with the price cuts that I think obviously led to earnings contracting, led to the stock price falling, but that he believes is best for the company long term in terms of making EVs mass market. So, I think on the surface, this is about robo-taxis, but it's really just kind of some classic Musk marketing because this is really about the next gen platform. They're putting it into production. He doesn't want to say, hey, cheaper, better Tesla coming. Don't buy our $40,000 Tesla. We got a 25,000 coming. Instead, he says, hey, Robotaxi. Immediately, it starts a debate. Oh my God, Robotaxi. You idiot. They can't do a Robotaxi. Well, is that going to be approved? Now it's this huge thing. Everybody's writing about it. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's debating it. But whether they really actually are ready for Robotaxi on this date or 6 months later or 2 years later is kind of neither here nor there. They're setting up this production process that they've said they think is going to revolutionize the industry. That'll allow them to build an EV for half the cost and will be much more modular than the previous system.
We have a quick announcement at the top of our screens. Thank you, Steve, from live chat for letting me know that Tesla FSD hit more than 1 billion miles driven. Tesla hit more than 1 billion miles driven on FSD.
How close was that
per
to
the
your
Tesla AI
prediction,
account
Omar?
at the top. Grant?
Yeah, just in response to that, I would point out that Elon got on stage and talked about robotaxis 5 years ago. So I mean, you're saying like even if it's 2 years later, like we're already 5 years later, in my view.
Look at that inflection when FSD 12 came out.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is wild. Straight up. For those of you who request to speak, you can leave a question in the replies if I don't accept your request to speak.
My tracker projected that we're just over 900 million miles, so we were about 50 days away from achieving it by my linear extrapolation. So this shows that unlike previous quarters, we're actually seeing an acceleration in the rate of miles added, meaning people are driving with it more, which isn't surprising.
All right.
This is a huge milestone, the first of many billions of miles. It's something nobody in the industry has done before. Waymo's on the order of a few 10 million miles, 1 billion miles driven with software. And it took them 3.5 years to do it. You know what? I bet the next billion miles is not going to take 3 years. I think people are going to be shocked at how fast we get to 2 billion. What a day.
All right, let me see. Just one more question, I think. Nick? Nick, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. Omar, do you see Nick as a speaker?
No.
Okay. All right, this is great. It's been a crazy day, man. Up and down, pretty volatile. We have a Robotaxi announcement coming on August 8th. Some rumors that Reuters put out an exclusive article, Elon denied. We had extensive discussions on a skeptic's points, 4 points about Tesla's data advantage. So if you all want to hear about all that, you can go back and listen either on X, on desktop version of X, you can do 2x speeds as well, or you can watch on YouTube live as well. Scroll back and forth, even during live section, you can do it on YouTube. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. And unless we get any more breaking news over the weekend, I will see you guys on Monday. Thank you and take care.